This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
I think I'm putting a lot more emphasis on what I want to do in there. Things that, I got away from that I was doing at the beginning of the season. And I think that Brownie and BA and, even JJ's in there helping me out. Really just, kind of putting emphasis on the things that I got away from it and trying to get back to it. So we've done a lot of different things, and, day by day we're trying to get back to where I was.
That was Jordan Walker earlier this week talking about the adjustments that he is attempting to make alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Alex getting some much-deserved time off today. Jordan Walker has not been the player that we all hoped he was going to be. This season, he looks a lot like he did last year, and this is after what he said was an amazing offseason of work with Brant Brown. He came in and he looked better. Like, if we're just being honest, he looked more comfortable at the plate. The results weren't great, but they were better, and it felt like maybe this could be the season that Tanner had been talking about, where he just stabilizes, just become a league average hitter, so that way eventually you can take off. Well, it's been anything but ever since. He's now batting 195, which is worse than his 201 average from last year. His slugging percentage is down to 265, guys. 265 slugging percentage so far this season. It just hasn't worked. And so now you look at where they're at. This is a team that is starting to play winning baseball again. So Katie Wu had a piece earlier today over on The Athletic about how the Cardinals are navigating a season in which the team is starting to play better, and they do want to win in 2025. I would imagine that's something that Mo has high on his list of goals is, hey, I would prefer not to go out with 3 consecutive underperforming seasons relative to expectations. So he was asked in this piece with Katie Wu, what's the plan here? You guys talked all about runway, but Nolan Gorman has been in and out of the lineup. Same thing has been true at times for Alec Burleson, and now Jordan Walker is struggling. What do you do? And he basically said, yeah, we're walking a fine line there. Like, we understand that. We would like to win. He continued, we're trying to win out here. We did state that we're going to be patient, and we are. But there are some strategic things that these young men need to start doing to show that they can make those changes. We can't continue to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. Yes, they are going to be given a long opportunity to try to get themselves where they need to be, but it is not infinite. T-Bone, that last quote there, they are going to be given a long opportunity to get themselves where they need to be, but it's not infinite. That, to me, is really where I want to hone in on here. What does the runway look like for Jordan Walker? Because I think we're seeing the end of it for Nolan Gorman, and that's happened all season long since literally opening day when Victor Scott earned his opportunity. To me, this should be a year where the runway is infinite for Jordan Walker. He's just going out there every day, and yeah, that may mean an off day every once a week, whatever, that's cool, but 145 games should be, in my opinion, the goal for Jordan Walker, regardless of what the results look like. How do you feel about this right now, given what the struggles have been for Jordan Walker this season?
I think they're getting to a point where, though I thought they would kind of take that approach that you were just talking about, which was, hey, we want to get 140 games for Jordan Walker this year. I kind of wonder if they're going to abandon ship potentially at the end of the month if this thing doesn't get turned around for them. Because if they are going to try and do the tightrope of winning while also trying to develop guys, it might be better to send Jordan Walker back down to the minor leagues once again, or at least maybe change his role on the team to where maybe he stays on the team and he is, I can't believe I'm saying this, platoon bat. He hits for average against lefties a little better than he does righties so far this year. Maybe you just kind of change what the role is for him this year. But I do think they are going to get to a point where if Jordan Walker doesn't turn around, they will cut off the runway for him. Because at some point, you can't just continue to let him sink here at the big league level. And that might mean, and admitting if you send him down again, of, yeah, he's just not a big leaguer. And I think they're getting close to that point. I don't think this is going to be a, hey, if Jordan Walker's still hitting below the Mendoza line by the time we get to the end of May here and we get into June, we're just going to keep throwing them out there, especially if they are winning. If they are still in the race, I can totally see a scenario in which they look at this and say, it is time for us to abandon ship. It is time to move away from Jordan Walker getting everyday opportunities. And then you can create playing time, by the way, and especially depending on what you do with Nolan Gorman, you can create more playing time for other younger players, right? If you send down a Jordan Walker, for example, you can move Donovan to the outfield. You can call up a Thomas Saggese. Now Saggese can be your second baseman. Like, this is not just a, hey, we don't have other options. They've got another piece down in the minor leagues that we saw can play here at the big league level.
I am not willing to do that. I don't think Jordan Walker learns the problems at the minor league level. His problem is the slider. And the only place where you're going to see sliders that are major league caliber, where it's not only the stuff is crazy, but the location is crazy, that's here. It's the only place that you can continue to work on your biggest weakness. Eventually, you got to find out, can the dude hit the slider? If the answer is no, it is what it is, and you're just going to have to live with that, right? Sometimes you miss on prospects. We've seen prospects miss here, but this is not just a Cardinals problem. This is a Major League Baseball problem, man. That breaking ball is the thing that makes or breaks, no pun intended, your career. And if you can't spit on it, dude, it's over. It doesn't matter what the attributes are, that he swings as fast as any player in Major League Baseball, that he runs faster than any player his side should possibly be capable of, that he's playing right now, borderline elite level defense in the outfield. All of those things can be true, and if you can't hit that pitch, it does not matter. So if you're going to find out whether or not he can hit that pitch, I think that has to happen to me here. And that runway is right now, man. I know that this season right now is like kind of on the brink of, all right, it could go one way where you think about even potentially buying at the deadline, or it could go very much another, and you make moves that don't just affect you for this year, but for years to come of selling off guys from your roster that other teams are going to really like, even if they have multiple years remaining on their contracts. To me, Jordan Walker is the number one priority for the 2025 season. It was that way entering opening day. It remains that way to me on May 9th. And the one way that changes is if he gets into his own headspace. If you find out, and the team is the only one that would know this, if Jordan Walker is lost at the plate and is like just sinking where he can't get out of his own head, that's when you have to make the change and you say, okay, go down, get some confidence for a few weeks, then come back up and we'll continue to work on this. But barring that, dude, I think he's got to be out there basically every day for the foreseeable future, and you find out what you've got in this kid at this point in his career. If it doesn't work out then, we can talk about an adjustment to his role with the team heading into next season. But for right now, no, man, I'm continuing to run him out there the exact same way that they have thus far.
Yeah, and when I say change of role, I mentioned platoon because he is hitting lefties.
I mean, they tried that last year, so it's not a crazy idea.
Yeah, but what I'm kind of referring to is they basically do what they have kind of been doing right now. And they've been saying this is kind of off days, right? Hey, it's off days. We're working on the pitch selection. We're trying to work with him on laying off that breaking ball low and away. But maybe this is just what ultimately becomes the spot for Jordan Walker, right? You give him another runway of the rest of this month. You look at it and say, okay, where are we? And if he said, and you look at it and you say, hey, he's not hitting. He seems like he's still in a good mental headspace. You probably then have to, instead of sending him down, because you are right, there is no major league slider down at the minor leagues that he's going to learn and adjust to. Almost sending him down at this point would feel like admitting it's just not going to work, in my opinion.
Or that his mental side is so lost that he needs a reset.
Sure, but he gets sent down to that spot. Why? How does he get down to that mental spot? It's because he's not hitting at the big leagues. So I think it would be admitting it's just not going to work with him. When I say changing of the role, it just might be what they're doing right now, which is, hey, we're going to kind of pick our spots with him, right? We're going to pick what is a good matchup for him right now. That guy that you go up against that has that wicked slider, Walker's not in the lineup. Does that mean he's in the lineup every day? No, it might mean he's in the lineup for 6 of the next 10 games or 5 of the next 10 games. At some point, I think they will get to that conclusion if he continues down this path.
I'm not doing that. Nope. Because I understand. Eventually, that may be where you get to, right? That's the same thing as platooning. It's just like instead of it being a handedness, you're going against styles of pitchers. I want to find out if he's capable of making the adjustment. This game is about adjustments, and so far, Walker has not been good at it, man. Let me just be honest about it. And that doesn't mean he never will. But so far, he has not adjusted to that specific pitch. If we're being honest, he really hasn't adjusted in general, like his approach at the plate. There have been moments where it's like, okay, all of the stuff that the coaches are telling him, you can see it getting implemented. But overall, it has not taken for Jordan Walker. I looked earlier today because tonight will be Jordan Walker's 200th Major League Baseball game. It'll be the 200th game of his Major League Baseball career, assuming that he's in the lineup, which I think is probably a fair assumption. If they're going up against a lefty, so that they've got like 5 of the next 6 games. It's crazy, the stretch of games that they've got against lefties. He'll be in there regularly right now. If you look at where he's at in terms of his OPS numbers, through 200 games, he's at a 705 OPS. T-Bone, I looked up earlier today in the last decade, guys that are age 24 or younger, so similar to Jordan Walker in that regard, and what they had done at this point in their career by OPS. Some guys that were worse than Jordan Walker. Just to put this in perspective, because it feels very doom and gloom right now around Jordan Walker. It might not be a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. Here are some guys that were worse than him at this point in their respective careers. Geraldo Perdomo, who right now is the best shortstop in Major League Baseball for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Other guys that fit into this criteria. C.J. Abrams had a terrible start to his career, has been pretty darn good for the Nationals recently. Mason Wynn, in his first 200 games, had a 679 OPS. Michael Garcia, who was a third baseman for the Royals, he plays a little all over the diamond, though. Michael Garcia had a 680 OPS this year. Looks like a legit breakout candidate in Kansas City. Big reason why their offense has taken off. Tim Anderson, 685 OPS up to this point in his career. Anthony Volpe, 689 OPS at this point in his career. Josh Naylor was worse than Jordan Walker as well. Dansby Swanson was worse. Isaac Paredes was worse. Bobby Witt Jr. was basically the exact same. I'm not telling you that it's going to work for Jordan Walker. I mention those names because he would not be an outlier. If it took him a while to adjust to the big leagues, if it took him a while to be a productive big leaguer, and then you get to 24, 25, 26 years old, and you see it take off. And that's why I'm sticking with him. That's why I am not giving up on this just yet. I would give it the entire season before I even make any kind of a call on what his role is going to be, and that's for 2026, not for 2025. The only thing that would make me adjust on that would be his mental state. If he ends up becoming a player that just cannot figure this out mentally, that's when you think about adjusting on the fly.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. Like, I am in the camp of playing Jordan Walker. But what makes this tough and makes it hard to read what they are trying to do is, Mo said it in Katie's piece, they are trying to walk the tightrope right now.
Totally.
Of it is about runway and it is about winning. And at some point, he even said in the piece, it's at some point we're going to have to pick a path, right? So what happens if you pick the path of, let's say they have a great road trip. Let's say they go 7-2 on this road trip. Hell of a road trip. They play well this month. They're in the race at the end of the month. They're like a game back of the Chicago Cubs. You get it a little bit further into June, you're still right in this race. If you pick the path of winning and you still don't see Jordan Walker hitting, that's where it becomes difficult. Now, I don't remember if I said this on the show or I said this on the Redbird Report podcast, but I think you can do both, right? You can continue to say, Walker is getting runway, but we're still going to operate and try and win these baseball games. So maybe that does mean you do pinch hit for him against a hard-throwing slider late in the ballgame while you're trying to win. That's one at-bat. I don't think that hinders his development, okay? In a big game situation, I'm not saying you pinch hit for him if you're up like 5-0 and a big right-handed slider comes in.
Sure.
But it's the winning run is at second base, bottom of the ninth inning. Here comes this hard-throwing slider from the bullpen. Maybe that's the spot where you pinch hit for him.
He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Bradford Bruns, and I'm Brandon Kiley. If you guys would like to get involved in the show today, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. You can check us out on YouTube, as always, at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. And while you're over there, you can check out the new Last Minute Blues podcast, which is out right now. You can also check out the Redbird Report over there. But the Last Minute Blues podcast, they were able to be joined today by Alexander Steen, the Blues general manager, the general manager in waiting, I guess would be the best way to frame it. He joined them today for about a 25-minute conversation. Highly recommend checking that out, and we will play part of that coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Text us anytime at 314-399-9646 on the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation text line on 101 ESPN. St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
I think that the players really understood the amount of work that they put in to get there. That wasn't something that just happened overnight, and it takes time, and you have to slowly build it, and in these increments that I know have been discussed, and that's the view we have on it. Like we made progress this year, but we got to reflect and look back on everything that we did, how hard it is in the NHL to win in this league, what it takes, how much extra we did, the investment we put in ourselves, and then we have to start day one doing it again.
That was Alexander Steen on the Last Minute Blues podcast. You can watch that in its entirety right now on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. It was such a big interview. They even got the big podcast studio, T-Bone. So I know the guys did a fantastic job for this. Again, the full conversation, Last Minute Blues podcast with Alexander Steen, available for you now, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. They talked about his journey to becoming a front office executive, what the transition has been like over the last year, how he's worked with some of the young players, and just what his experience was watching the end of that season and how everything unfolded. That cut you just heard was Steen talking about the frustration of losing the way that they did, but also having the backdrop of, man, what a great season that was, and what that's like as a team when you're trying to take that next step. I wanted to take a listen as well, because that's Alexander Steen's perspective on it. Jim Montgomery was also on the Fast Lane yesterday, and he talked about the culture that the Blues have been able to build and what that was like for the new players to experience.
The other thing that resonated was people that were new here, whether, Broberg, Holloway, Fowler, come to mind right away. And Joseph said this too, who is new this year, is how much they love this city, how much they love our fans. The culture in the Blues organization of making people feel welcome by the players, by everybody involved, how they're treated in the city is they can't. And Rivs, you know this and I know this, but it's they fall in love with the city. They can't believe it's this good. That is something that is really important to us as an organization.
T-Bone, when I heard that yesterday on the Fast Lane, I thought to myself, that's the old Cardinals model. Like, what he's talking about is what the Cardinals used to sell. They would bring a guy in, they'd be here for a year or two, and then they'd sign a contract extension because they're like, oh my God, why would I ever want to play anywhere else, right? A lot of guys would get here at the end of their career and they'd say, man, I wish I was like 25. Could have spent my entire career here in St. Louis. But you think back, I mean, whether it be Mark McGuire, who was kind of the start of this. He came at the end of his career, of course, but Jim Edmonds then, Scott Rowland, Matt Holliday, and it just continued along for really a 25-year stretch. But that was the model. And then they kind of got away from it, but they got back to it with Goalie, and then eventually with Arenado, who already had the contract in place. I think that the Blues could utilize this even more in future seasons. And I do wonder, you saw him do it with Pavel Buchnevich. Comes here for a couple of years, loves it. Even with them going through this retool process, decided, I still want to be around for this because I trust this organization. I like the way that they operate. I enjoy being here. I do wonder if maybe that's something they could implement into their offseason plans of, we're looking to free agency and we see Sam Bennett. What if there is a guy out there that's coming up on a deal, 1 or 2 years remaining on his contract right now, and they say, we think we can convince this guy to stay as long as he falls in love with it the way that Cam Fowler did, the way that Matthew Joseph did, the way that Broberg and Holloway did. I wonder if that's something they'd consider this offseason, T-Bone.
Yeah, I wonder. And Army even had the cut with us before the season had ended. I think it was right before the playoffs where he said, hey, look, we have to go into free agency knowing we're like 15 to 20th on people's list, right? Because we're just not going to be the draw to the bigger cities out on the coast. And we also don't have a no income tax like Florida does. So that hurts us a little bit. So, yeah, I absolutely think that if they look at this and they say, how much interest does Sam Bennett have, who we've talked about? If Sam Bennett doesn't have a lot of interest, we're lower on his list, then, yeah, I think you do look to explore and say, okay, who is the guy that we can go maybe potentially trade for, see if he falls in love with the city, and then we can potentially sign him to a contract extension. And the thing that makes it so great with what the Blues have been doing, I mean, you mentioned Pavel Buchnevich, you look at Holloway, you look at guys like Cam Fowler, you look at Broberg. Most of those guys are very young when they do this decision. That was a little bit different from the Cardinals model, at least at the back end of it, was you look at when Paul Goldschmidt was here, when they got him and they acquired him, he was 31 years old. That's kind of the Cam Fowler one. They never made a move that acquired someone that was super young and youthful like that could come in and really impact their organization. So I do believe this can absolutely be the model that they continue to use and build upon what the Cardinals had done in baseball, use kind of the exact same formula.
I don't know who that player could be. Just full disclosure. I don't know. I mean, you look at next year's free agency class, not July 1st, but the year after. I mean, it's a star-studded lineup, right? David Pastrnak is a free agent after next season. Kyle Connor is a free agent after next season. Sidney Crosby, maybe he just loves toasted Ravs and would like to finish his career here in St. Louis. But beyond that, it's Artemi Panarin, Nick Suzuki, Jesper Bratt. Like, there are a lot of guys out there that are coming up on potential extensions with their respective clubs. And we've seen this, and it really started with Matthew Tkachuk. A lot of the time, those teams, if they determine this offseason, we're just not going to be able to get something done with this guy, they have to get something for him. They just can't let that player, especially if you're in a smaller market, walk via free agency. So you got to go out there and decide, okay, where are we at and what can we do with them? I'll be curious to see what those respective teams decide to do with their contracts and whether or not they end up potentially not just hitting the market, but being trade options going into this offseason. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into a game of Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll get to those in about 15 minutes. Brad Thompson, Cardinals analyst, joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
The St. Louis Battlehawks host the Birmingham Stallions at the Battle Dome at America's Center Saturday, May 17th. Then 1 week later, see the Battlehawks host the San Antonio Brahmas on Friday night, May 23rd.
It's 2 big home games and time to show the United Football League that CAW is the law.
Get all the ticket info and a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to both games right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. The NBA playoffs are on ESPN tomorrow night. Warriors and Timberwolves. Pregame at 7. Tip-off at 7:30. Your home for the NBA is 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Cards try to preserve their streak by the Potomac. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Winners of 5 straight Ollie Marmol's Cardinals hit Nationals Park late this afternoon. A 5:45 p.m. first pitch DC style. St. Louis currently sits at 19-19 overall. Its road mark, though, remaining rough, but Jordan Walker confident that certain habits can translate anywhere.
I feel like at some point we're going to correlate with how we play here. We're going to start playing on the road. We're going to start, beating teams like that. I think that, the energy that we have here is a lot more than we had on the road in the past, but, that's definitely going to change, and that's really the key.
Walker's 2-run single gave STL some insurance in Wednesday's 5-0 shutout over Pittsburgh. As for those Pirates, tonight's game against Atlanta will feature Don Kelly running point. Derek Shelton was just dismissed. NHL Winnipeg battling Dallas shortly after 8:30. Toronto could go up 3-0 on Florida. This SportsCenter update has been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're hanging with Brad Thompson on 101 ESPN.
Hanging breaking ball from Brad Thompson. Now, boy, does he get a swing on it. Lift and separate and see you later.
Hanging with BT is sponsored by St. Luke's, ranked top 2% in the nation for cardiac surgery by Health Grades. Visit stlukes-stl.com.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley, and we are happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend, the Cardinals analyst for FanDuel Sports Midwest. He is the one and only Brad Thompson joining us here on the show. BT, Cardinals are back to 500. They've won 5 straight games. How you doing, man?
Man, it is way more fun. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah, winning is way better. I don't care what you want to call the season. I know they're not calling it a rebuild, but we know there is a transition. I don't care what you're doing. Winning is way more fun. So I'm doing great, man. How are you guys doing?
We're doing really well, and the Cardinals overall have been pretty solid this year when they're not going to New York or Boston. So I did want to get your perspective on this, BT. It's something that we talked about the other day on our podcast and then yesterday on the show as well. The Cardinals, basically outside of those 2 series, have been like 7 games above 500, and they've got like a plus 35 run differential. Is that more of who you think this team really is? And really it was just like a couple of bullpen blowups. What do you make of their struggles in those 2 seasons compared to what they've been basically the rest of the season combined?
Well, look, in fairness, those are 2 very good teams, right? Absolutely. And there are going to be times where good teams kick your butt. And I think that definitely happened in New York for sure. I think that there was a winnable game, or if not 2, for them in Boston. That didn't happen. The one that Helsley had and then got away, that one definitely should have gone their way. But I think that the truth in the 2025 Cardinals is going to be a bit of a roller coaster. I think at the end of the day, the highs maybe aren't going to be as high as some of the highs. The lows won't be as low, and the truth will be somewhere in the middle. And the real definition of this team is, do your young guys continue to progress? I mean, that's just kind of going to be what it is. But they have, we all know they've played better baseball at home, certainly. Those 2 road trips did not go great, but they've only won 4 games so far on the road. They split with Cincinnati last time out. Consistency away from Busch Stadium has been harder to find. But it's just a young team. So, look, I won't say that 2 series, like those are outliers and this team is way better. No, I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
BT, BK had mentioned, hey, a couple blow-ups with the bullpen in those series in Boston and then with the Mets. Do you think they may be starting to stabilize that bullpen in the middle innings with Mats moving to kind of a relief role now and then Gordon Graceffo getting that spot as well?
I think it helps a ton. And you're right, that has, T-Bone, that's been one of the biggest issues, is those middle innings, because Leahy has been one of the best relievers in baseball. Phil Maton has been a great pickup, especially late for a couple of $1 million. Like, he's been awesome, and you know what Ryan Helsley is, but bridging that gap has been an issue. And this is an issue
that they knew was coming. Like they knew this was going to be a risk when you put Matthew Liberatore in the rotation, that you were going to miss out on that hybrid guy, right, that could do it at a high level, but it was well worth it. And I'm glad that they did that for them in the future and for Matthew Liberatore right now. But, yeah, you're starting to see it solidify. I'm so happy for Steven Matz. Like, I know the last 3 years for him have been maddening. I'm sure this year is maddening too, because he wants to be a starter all the time, I'm sure. He's been a great teammate, but whatever role he's been thrown into right now, he's throwing the ball really well, and he provides not only a bridge that can eat innings, but he provided, as you saw the other day, as he got the 8th inning, like he can be a leverage guy too. So I think that really helps. And then Gordon Graceffo has come out and just said, look, I'm a big leaguer, and here's the stuff. And he was showing off in Cincinnati, 99. He's letting it rip. He's confident. So that will be a big key, is those middle innings, handing it over. The Cardinals rotation, in large part, has done a really good job of eating up innings and throwing more innings than a lot of staffs in baseball. But you still have to have that bridge, right? You can't always lean on those same guys over and over again. So I think it's a great point, T-Bone, with Matsu and what he's doing, and with Graceffo emerging, that could definitely help you win some of these tight games that they've lost in the past.
Brad Thompson is our guest here on 101 ESPN. You can watch him over on FanDuel Sports Midwest. You can hear him weekly here on BK and Ferrario and throughout all of the shows here on 101 ESPN. BT, you mentioned Libby, and what we have seen from him thus far is nothing short of amazing. The guy has been awesome for the Cardinals, and it's been really pretty cool to see the development of him as a starting pitcher. It takes some time. I am curious what you think has changed that has allowed for this. He's implemented the cutter more than the last time that we saw him as a starter. He's basically flipped the curve and the slider usage, but you're a former pitcher. You have insight into this that certainly me and T-Bone do not have. What have you seen that's changed for Liberatore compared to the last time that he got extended runway as a starter at the big league level?
Yeah, it's not just the way that he's using his stuff. To your point, he is using it differently, but his stuff in general is different. So this is the nitty gritty of it, right? And this is why I know that a lot of people will push back on data and analytics and all the little stuff, but that's what's gotten him to this next level. It's him sitting there with Dusty and with during the end of last season and this offseason and in spring training, and with Dean Kekeffer and the rest of the staff, and trying to figure out the best ways to manipulate the baseball and move the ball in his hand and create more spin. Like, he's changed and tweaked his grip on little things, and you're seeing the spin data and all of the little numbers that they chase get better for him. Like, that cutter is like a real weapon now. His slider is disgusting, and one of the biggest changes, and you saw this in his last time out, was his fastball. You guys remember when he first came up? Libby's fastball, I don't care if he was throwing at 95, 96, 97, it was incredibly hittable. It was just a very average fastball. They could see it. It dropped for a hitter, like perceived velocity, right? It would drop at a standard rate, and it would just be right into their swing. Well, now he's got more of that vertical break on his fastball. He's gained about 3-4 inches on that, and it's got real ride. And those are tweaks that they have made to make his fastball more effective. And when the fastball is effective, it sets up everything else. And so it's an evolution, right? It was a 23-year-old pitcher a couple of years ago. He's 25 now. He's learned himself. He's learned his routine. He knows how to be strong. It also helps when he knows what he's doing every day. It's very hard to have that hybrid job where you're starting, you're relieving, kind of like the Steven Matz job. Veteran guy, he can handle it. A little bit more difficult for a young player. But it's him, like, really digging into the minutia of what they're doing, what they're trying to do. And he's not the only one. Like, everybody on the staff is tweaking little things. But I think that he's one of the biggest ones you're seeing the changes on. I would add him and Kyle Leahy, of the guys that you look at their stuff from what they're doing last year to this year being way different.
BT, I did want to ask you about Jordan Walker, because you had mentioned this season's going to be, with the team as a whole, there's going to be a lot of highs, there's going to be a lot of lows, and Walker is currently going through the lows right now. I mean, you look at the numbers, it's worse than what it was last year slightly. The strikeout rate has ballooned on him. He's still struggling with the breaking ball low and away. And Mo said to Katie Wu in The Athletic today, hey, we're trying to still walk that tightrope of trying to win ball games while also giving these guys runway. What do you think that runway looks like for Jordan Walker if he continues to have these struggles?
Yeah, I think it's a hard part to like put a definitive date on it. Obviously, needs more at bats. 122 plate appearances right now for Jordan Walker. That would be about a fifth of what a regular season would be for a player. I know he's had some days off here and there. They're about a quarter of the way through the year. But the big thing to keep an eye on for Jordan Walker, and I know the staff is doing this, the results are what the results are. And offensively, they stink. Like, that is not what he is expected to be. And again, the reminder is he's 22 years old. He'll be 23 in a couple of weeks. Just like we talked about with Libby, things evolve, things change. But is mentally how he's handling the down times. Because, look, you could send him down to AAA right now if you wanted to, and guess what Jordan Walker's going to do? He's going to go down to AAA, he's going to hit doubles, he's going to hit homers, and the results, like if you're just looking at the results, they're going to look good. And then if you dig into the results, you're going to see that all these pitchers are making mistakes, they're hanging breaking balls, it's middle in, it's up, and it's stuff that he'll hit at the big league level, but they don't make these same mistakes at the big league level. But the key is if they feel like he's getting down on himself and getting mentally defeated because of these struggles at this level, well, then maybe that's when you have to give him a break, and it doesn't feel like a break for the player, but to send him down and let him work on some things mentally. I know he's putting in the work. I see him like every single day. He's putting in the work with his swing. But I think that when the game comes in, you guys know this, you revert back to muscle memory sometimes, and he starts pulling off, and he falls back into those same tendencies. So the key is to snap that. But I don't know exactly where that line looks like. I would probably guess like the next 3-4 weeks probably you give him, unless you're seeing some of the mental things creeping in, because the last thing you want to do is have a player bury himself mentally.
All right, BT, we'll get you out of here on this. We're talking to Brad Thompson here on 101 ESPN. Ivan Herrera is expected to return to the team this weekend. There was the announcement yesterday. Luken Baker is going to be the corresponding move heading back down to AAA. They've got a lot of lefties coming up, so I would imagine there will probably be some opportunities for Ivan Herrera between the injury coming back plus lefties on the mound at DH this weekend. How do you think they make the top of this order work? 'Cause Mason Wins looked great in the 2-hole. How do you make this lineup work with Ivan Herrera coming back? It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, who cares, right? It is a good problem. No, you're right. So Wynn has been very good. Wynn has been very good in the 2-hole. But he is like for Herrera, ease him back in. Like just put him in there somewhere, I don't know, 5, 6, whatever. I'm not making the lineup, but just have him back in there and ease into it and see what happens. And like you said, I think it's a great problem to have, having a little bit more thump in this lineup, having him back. But you don't want to throw him back in there and just expect it's going to look like it did right before he went on the IL. So I'm excited to have him back. It stinks for Baker because, this is a young man that you talk about going down to AAA and putting up numbers. All that dude did last year was hit 32 homers there in AAA. There's nothing more for him to prove, but it's almost an impossible role for him at the big league level right now when you're not that guy that gets everyday reps. But Herrera coming back is an awesome boost for this club, and hopefully one that kind of pushes them over the edge, score some more runs, win some more games on the road, and build off of this momentum that they have currently.
Hey, BT, by the way, if you can pass this along to the coaching staff for us, the 314 says just move Jordan Walker closer to the plate. That'll be the thing that unlocks him. So pass that along. Appreciate the time as always. We'll talk with you again next week.
Look, I will pass that along right now. Closer to the plate, they say?
Yep, closer to the plate. That's going to unlock everything that he has to offer as a big leaguer.
That should really help on that sinker in that he's getting murdered on also.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just going to help him with that slider away, and it fixes everything.
So real quick, a serious note on that. One of the biggest keys for him right now, even though the swing is kind of what it is, it's giving something away to the pitcher. And right now he's going to have to give away. Like if there's a pitch on the outer half, like he's got to be able to not swing at it. That's going to be the biggest thing for him right now. And then middle in, do your damage. 2 strikes, you have to battle. But it's about choosing your battles right now for Jordan Walker, and I really hope that he's able to do that because I love the kid. I want him to stick, but it is very rough at the big league level. But I will pass along the note.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that, BT. Hey, all the best, man. Enjoy yourself this weekend. We'll talk with you again next week.
All right. See you guys.
You got it. That's Brad Thompson joining us here on 101 ESPN. Appreciate his time as always.
I'm glad the text line's going to fix Jordan Walker.
Yeah.
This is going to be great.
I mean, I think it's amazing that it's that quick of a fix. All they had to do was literally just move him up a little bit. Like, hey, get in the box with Wilson Contreras, show him what Contreras does. Contreras is snug up there at the plate. It'll be all good. It's no problem, no harm, no foul. I find all of this to be really fascinating because they are in a really interesting spot right now, man. You mentioned the potential lineup swap of Thomas Saggese for Jordan Walker. If you just swapped those two players, put Donovan into the outfield, Saggese at second base, I think you're probably a better team. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of nuance that needs to go into that discussion. But if we're just saying how do you construct the best lineup possible right now, I think it probably is what you said earlier. And then that becomes a question of like, okay, so if Walker's struggles continue and you go on this road trip and maybe he's buried at the plate and it's the same stuff all over the place. From my view, I would continue running him out there and I would just see what it looks like for the next 75 games. I know that sounds crazy, but it's what I do this year. I'd be prioritizing him above all else because I agree with BT. You can send him down to AAA. Those results might look better, and it might have nothing to do with the real changes that have been implemented into his swing or his approach. I would continue allowing him this opportunity at the big league level. But if they are changing their mindset a bit and they look at this and they say, hey, our bullpen we think is fixed now and our rotation's better than we expected it to be because they think Matthew Liberatore is a legitimate number 2 starter right now and everything else flows into place from there. And we think our lineup can be pretty damn good if Ivan Herrera comes back and he hits the way that he was and Thomas Saggese is what he was the last time that we saw him. I understand the appeal of that. I just personally would not go in that direction, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, BT said, he didn't think there'd be a timeline on it, but he said maybe 3 to 4 weeks. He kind of reassessed. That's kind of where I'm at, and that would bring you to about at the end of May, and that's when I look at it. Because like right now, if you do believe the bullpen is fixed, I actually think they're going to finish above 500 this month. If the bullpen is truly fixed, that was really their biggest problem. So if you finish above 500 this month, you are in this thing, and you have the potential to avoid one bad month to be a possibility of looking at yourself as a buyer going into the deadline. And the reason I bring that up is you can continue to run Jordan Walker out there this month in one spot in your lineup because he's the only one. Because Gorman's spot, I think, is going to be taken over by Burley now that Herrera's back. You can have one spot in your lineup that's not hitting. That's not the end of the world. But it will be interesting if that continues and he continues to get buried at the major league level. I do think they will get to a spot where they potentially make the move. I said this with Gorman. I was convinced of this early on with Gorman. His runway was a lot shorter than I thought a lot of people expected. Now, I thought that was because of Saggese down in the minor leagues, not so much of Burley. I think Walker's has become a lot shorter than I think people were expecting coming into the season.
He's T-Bone. That is Bradford Bruns, and I'm Brandon Kiley. In 10 minutes, we're going to talk to Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie. Joins us each and every Friday on BK and Ferrario. A lot of really compelling stuff going on in the second round of the playoffs thus far, including a hell of a series between the Maple Leafs and the Panthers. Also want to get his thoughts from Game 1, Stars-Jets. What did we learn about the Blues when they weren't playing based on what we saw from the Jets in Game 1 of that series against the Stars? We'll get into that with Mike McKenna in 10 minutes. Ask us anything coming up next here on BK and Ferrario.
You can now listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. A little bit of news to pass along. ESPN's new app that they are going to be releasing soon has a name. They have announced it today. This is according to CNBC. It will be called ESPN.
Go on.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a new name?
They said it was confusing with all of the different names that these streaming platforms have. And so now ESPN is going to make it easier to understand by naming their streaming platform ESPN, which makes it definitely less confusing about what you're going to be watching and where and how. They say it's going to continue to have ESPN Plus as well. And the difference is going to be this is slightly more expensive because it includes some of their most watched programs, including like Monday Night Football, for example. So instead of having to have the over-the-TV offering, you can watch Monday Night Football on ABC, but neither here nor there. That is apparently something that will be offered on ESPN's new streaming app, which will be aptly named ESPN. All right, let's get to some of your questions for Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything, sports or otherwise. You can go ahead and get those in right now. From the 314, guys, if you had to say who you think will be the conference winners and Super Bowl matchup for the upcoming year, who would it be?
So I still like Detroit out of the NFC. I think this might be the year they get back over the top. The NFC feels kind of weak to me again going into this season. Coming from the AFC, though, like, I hate to say it, I think I still might lean towards the Kansas City Chiefs just because it's the
I think the Chiefs are going to be really good this year.
I think so, too. I think I would go KC right now will win the AFC. I will take Detroit to finally get over the hump in the NFC. And I'll say Lions win the Super Bowl. I don't want to see the Chiefs win it again.
I will go with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, but if I'm going to go different, I would go with the Bills. That would be the team that I think maybe this is the year that they finally get over that hump. And on the NFC side of things, T-Bone, you're going to like this answer. I think it's the Rams.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think the Rams have had a hell of an offseason. I think people are underestimating the upgrade from Cooper Kupp to Devontae Adams. That is a ridiculous addition to that offense. And you've got Matt Stafford now throwing him passes. Dude, he's had terrible quarterbacks, Devontae Adams has, throwing him the ball for like the last 4 years, basically. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the L.A. Rams taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. But, again, to be different, I'll go with the Buffalo Bills versus the Rams. And I think the Rams might win it this year.
Last season, you even had some questions, I think, entering the year about whether Williams could actually be the number one, could be that bell cow back. He definitely demonstrated that. You know, last season, guys, I wasn't quite as bullish on Detroit. I wasn't throughout the year, but I'm with you, Tanner. I think that the NFC at large this season is really there for the taking, either Lions or Rams for that matter. And you can't tell me that the Chiefs won't get back, and not with opening it up vertically that much more next season. Let's do it.
All right, let's get to this from the 314. You guys rubbing your mother's feet for Mother's Day. Apparently that is something that Jackson does.
Oh, what? No, I'm out.
Nope. For my wife, I got her a massage for Mother's Day that she went to yesterday. That was my gift this year. But no, I will not be doing that on my own. Not something that I am particularly interested in. Not in the cards.
I will not be rubbing my mother's feet for Mother's Day.
That is a choice.
That is a choice.
11.
From the 314, guys, who on the Blues do you view as untouchable this offseason? This is one of those questions that's always tough for me because there is no such thing truly as an untouchable. However, if we're being realistic, Robert Thomas to me is untouchable. Colton Parayko would be considered untouchable. Jordan Binnington is as close to untouchable as you can be. That's probably the list. Just because, like, other guys I'd be willing to listen to depending on what the offer is. But realistically speaking, I'm probably not trading Broberg or Holloway either. That's probably what I would have on that list.
We had this conversation a lot yesterday. I would put Kyra on that list. I don't think there's a piece that you upgrade from over him. And I said this yesterday to you guys off air. Do you know there's only one player in the NHL that had more goals than Jordan Kyrou and had a better plus-minus than him, and that was the leading scorer in the NHL in Leon Draisaitl. That's the only guy that had more goals and was a better plus-minus than him. So, no, I think Kyrou, to me, is the only other guy I would add to that list as untouchable.
All right, last thing here from the 217. Guys, Jamie on the fast lane yesterday proposed a trade of Kyrou to Florida for Sam Bennett and Aaron Ekblad to maximize Kyrou's value. What do you guys think of this proposal? Bennett and Ekblad are free agents. I think that would be one of the worst trades in the history of the NHL, and I don't mean that to diminish anything that Jamie said. Like, I don't think I understand the premise of this. You can sign those guys in free agency, and I'm assuming the idea is you get
their rights,
the window to be able to sign them, but I mean, guys,
and that doesn't guarantee you sign them, by the way.
Yeah, if you're doing something like that, I mean, you're not trading much for Bennett and Ekblad. You're definitely not giving up Jordan Kyrou. That would be wild to me. Yeah, if you think you can sign Sam Bennett, you just have players talk to him behind the scenes and say, hey, yo, like, you want to play with the Blues?
That doesn't happen.
That stuff happens all the time in the NHL.
I refuse to believe that.
No, I absolutely would not do that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. If you're trading for their rights, you're giving up like a middle round pick just because there is no guarantee that you sign them. So no, I'm with you. I would not trade Jordan Kyrou just for the right to sign those guys. You can just go sign them in free agency.
Somebody said, and you dump the salary. Hello, that's the value here. If you want to dump Jordan Kyrou's salary, I promise you there are better ways to do it.
Yeah.
I promise you. You can get a lot for Jordan Kyrou out there from other teams. Like, that would be not what I would do. Somebody said that is 100% not what Jamie said. I assumed that's probably the case. But no, if that's what he said, or if it's not, I would not do that. I would very much be opposed to a move like that. That's my firm opinion on the matter. All right, coming up next, maybe we'll throw that by Mike McKenna to see what his thoughts are. We probably won't, though. We'll ask him his thoughts on the way the season came to an end for the Blues and what his biggest thoughts are on what we've seen so far in the second round of the NHL playoffs. Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joins us next on 101 ESPN.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
How do you like me now?
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by the former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday throughout the hockey season on BK and Ferrario. He is, of course, Mike McKenna joining us here on the show. Mike, we appreciate the time as always. Last week we talked with you, and we were hoping at this point we'd be breaking down the second round of the playoffs. Unfortunately, the last 2 minutes of that game happened, and then overtime happened. What did you make, Mike, of the way that the season came to an end for the Blues in Winnipeg?
Oh, man, I tell you, the last 2 minutes was just soul-crushing. To me, the last 2 minutes of the 60 minutes of the game was soul-crushing. The overtime didn't feel that same way because it felt like it took forever.
Yeah.
And I've been in those before where you get into the second overtime, you're starting to nudge against even like thinking about a third, and the game just drags on and on. And it almost feels like two separate games. But I got to tell you that when the Blues got the puck, and I'm not talking about the time Buchnevich missed the net, it was really when Nikolai Ehlers whiffed at the blue line with, 6 seconds left here, BK? Does that sound about right, Tanner?
Yeah.
You know, I thought that's it. They got it, for sure. No problem, right? And just that one lost puck battle, and to watch Winnipeg, after muffing it all around, go cross ice twice, tape to tape to the middle, execute, tip up top over Binnington with a 1.6 or 2 seconds left, whatever they decided. I just thought, like, are you kidding me? Like, that's literally it. Like, how did this happen? Like, they hadn't executed like that really the whole series. So it's a chance loss, guys. It really was. Like, and I feel kind of the same way Doug Armstrong. The more I think about it, the worse I feel about it. When it happened in real time, I'm like, man, it was a great season, proud of these guys, blah, blah, blah. And then you just get them further away, and it's like, oh, they really did let this one slide. It really did happen.
Mike, what do you make of their 6-on-5 struggles? I mean, Monty said it in his postseason press conference. Hey, we've got to get better at that. He reiterated that on the fast lane yesterday. What do you make of their issues at 6-on-5 this year? I think they gave up 12 or 13 goals in those situations.
Yeah, I went back and watched some tape on this because I was trying to diagnose what exactly happened. It's not a lack of effort. It's not a lack of personnel. I just feel like the Blues weren't as aggressive on the puck at 6-on-5 that they needed to be, especially pressuring the points. And you can kind of get stuck at packing the middle of the ice, trying to have your house nice and tight, but you still got to put pressure on and try to create turnovers. And that's where the more I watched them, I thought the forwards aren't pressuring enough high. They can't run out of position, but you got to be able to at least put some pressure on and force the other team to do something with the puck they don't want to. I think part of this, though, is just weird. Like, it's an aberration. Like, they could probably change nothing and not allow that many goals at 6-on-5 next season. But I do think that tactically they could have been more aggressive in that scenario. And, again, I think it really fell on the forwards more so than the D in front of the net.
We're talking to Mike McKenna here on 101 ESPN. He joins us each Friday on behalf of Macadoodles. Mike, when you lose in the first round, I think it's a good time to reflect on where you're at as a team. It was already a win just for this team to be able to get to the playoffs. But when you think about where they fell short, how they fell short, what do you think are the biggest needs for this team going into the offseason?
I think they need to have a little bit better down the ice at center, and I love Braden Shen. I love, that Robert Thomas is a true number one at this point. But I'm not quite sure how you're going to backfill that. You're not going to make a trade to grab a number 2 centerman, I don't think, at least. So is it going to come from within? That's kind of a stretch to me as well. So, I think Shen stays in that position, but you're hoping somebody will grab it naturally versus a trade. I think there's going to be addition by subtraction. I'm not sure the future of a Matthew Joseph with this team, considering the number of top-end players that are coming along that need spots. I don't know if you can keep both Oscar Sundqvist and Radek Faksa, even though I'd like to have both. I think Faksa's more durable. He's going to play as much as we love Sonny, and he's a folk hero in this city. It's a diminishing returns thing with injuries. So you're going to have to look at that, and I think you're going to have to find somebody that's going to replace Ryan Suter as your number 6-7, I think. I'd like to get a little bit younger on the blue line in that way. Tyler Tucker, just awesome. Love that. But you can't expect to run the same 6D out there every game. And, Nick Leddy, he's getting older. Cam Fowler, older. Falk, they're not young. So they're going to need to bolster the D core, and I think they're going to need growth from within at the forward positions, especially at center.
We've talked about this on our show. I wanted to give you a chance to respond to it as well. Sam Bennett is a name that a lot of Blues fans are throwing out there right now. It's not hard to see the fit. He's a really solid middle six center for a contending team right now. He plays with a style that, this fan base would absolutely love, but the offensive output is somewhat limited, and that's despite the fact that he's primarily played with Matthew Tkachuk on his line for really the last 5 years now. Is that a guy that you think, given what the cost is likely to be, 6+ years, $7+ million per season, is that something you think the Blues should explore this offseason, Mike?
Well, they're going to need to, just to see what's at least available out there, because I don't think there's, BK Tanner, do you think there's a sure shot number 2 to centerman within the Blues organization right now, looking at it, that's going to be there and grow into that role in the next 2 years? Do you think that's going to happen?
No guarantees. Dvorsky's probably the only hope that you have there. And like you said, in the next 2 years, sure shot? No.
Right. And so what Armstrong's going to run into here is, do we want to allocate that money to a Sam Bennett with those dollars? And then do we think Dvorsky's going to be a third-line center? Maybe he is. Right? Vegas won a cup with William Karlsson as their third-line center. That's a guy that potted 40 goals one year. Maybe that's the strength that you have to have down the middle. So I do think there's a chance for that. Of course, Schen's still in the mix there. So with Bennett, I think that the value you get out of Bennett is larger than the points that he produces. There's more jam there. There's more effort. There's like you say, he would fit this fan base. But I don't think you're going to get him at less than 7.5. I don't know. I think he's going to be pushing up against that. He's going to make really good money. He's going to look to cash in. He's only making 4.4 right now. He's going to want 6, 7, you name it, for being a number 2. And he's 28 years old. So if I could get Sam Bennett on a 4 to 5 year deal, even if it's a little higher dollar figure, I'd explore that. But I wouldn't want to lock him up long term.
And Mike, this conversation with, okay, what do you do with that number 2 center if Dvorsky isn't that guy in 2 years? Signing a Sam Bennett is kind of pushing in your chips a little bit to the middle, right? Pushing and saying, okay, let's accelerate this. We now think we're past the retool. How much of this also is, we've had this conversation on the show as well, hey, we've got our goaltender in place in Jordan Binnington, who's getting older. He's turning 32 next season. He's big game Benner. How much is it that the organization says, we've got the goaltender, we just got to get the pieces so we can get him to the playoffs and see if he can do something for us?
Well, we know he can, right?
Yeah.
So Jordan Binnington can. I think one of the greatest strengths of the Blues is that Joel Hofer is trending towards being a goalie that could be relied upon as well. And this is kind of weird to say, but because Benner is the guy. Like, he is your playoff horse. He's your Four Nations horse. You name it. But I'd like to see what Hofer can do in the postseason. Big picture here, right? That's in the back of my head. That's not what's going to happen, but I think Army was pretty clear that whatever this is, retool, rebuild, but it's done, guys. So he's going to explore every option out there, and there's going to be pieces available besides Sam Bennett, whether it's even via trade or signing that. If you can kick Schenn to the left side for a while, maybe that's not a bad thing. Create some internal competition, make the young guys have to grab a role. I don't mind that. It just has to be the right fit for the Blues, and I wouldn't want to pigeonhole with a big-time deal unless you're getting a game breaker. And to me, a Sam Bennett, great player, he's not a game breaker.
All right, Mike, final question that I've got for you, hockey related, before we hear about what Macadoodles has to offer right now. Game 1 was played already between the Stars and the Jets. Stars win that one 3-0. Mikko Rantanen did what he's done the entire postseason thus far, which is win a game on his own. Did we learn anything about the Blues based on the way that we saw the Jets play against the Stars in game number 1 in your mind?
I think that in my eyes, the Blues are a more mature team than we give them credit for. At least in the second half of the season, past 4 nations under Monty, it feels tough to say that for a team that lost a game that they were winning by 2 goals with 2 minutes left. But I do think that the effort that the Blues put on the ice, the pace that they played, the structure that they committed to, I think that got to a level that I wasn't expecting this season. And I think that, Dallas is kind of in a similar place with that. You're nudging up against being able to compete with those teams in my eyes. There's more top-end talent on Dallas. But if you put St. Louis against the ice with Dallas, I guarantee they'd work and they'd give them fits. And I think their structure would be tough against a DeBoer-led team in Dallas. So I find it encouraging because I think that the Blues were playing in the sandbox that is where the winners are, not the wannabes. The team isn't a bunch of posers anymore, man. You know what I mean? I think they're right there.
Mike, we have one final thing we've got to get to with you, and that's what's going on right now in Macadoodles out in Darden Prairie. I know you guys had a really cool dinner the other night, including Logboat. What else is going on out there at Macadoodles?
Man, the Logboat dinner was so much fun last night. They're out of Columbia, Missouri. They're making great beer. Of course, Sugar Fire was in the building. We still have some Busch Light Apple. We only have about a half dozen 12-packs, so if you want to get in your buggy and get down here as quick as you can, that is a hot item. There's no guarantees. That may not be back until June. You want Busch Light Apple, you better get here. Next week, we got a dinner with Pursuit Spirits. They make some great bourbons and whiskeys. We also have a dinner coming up for a Taste of Tuscany. That's coming on the 22nd in our building. So we got some good events. I got a bunch of cool stuff in today. Got some 13th Colony Cask Strength. I also have some Frank August Wheated sitting on the shelves. There's less than 1,000 bottles in the wild of that, and we've got another 2 cases. So plenty of reason to run on into Macadoodles. We've got an allocated raffle that's going to end in 40 minutes. And there's an E.H. Taylor barrel proof in that. So you better run, man, because it's coming up quick. There's a couple Eagle Rares, Fortalezas, and an E.H. barrel proof here at Macadoodles Darden Prairie.
It's all over there at Macadoodles. Mike, we appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next Friday.
Sounds good. You guys be good. BK Tanner, love you. Talk to you next week.
Absolutely. That's Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joins us each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. Some of the best NHL breakdowns that you'll find anywhere. And if you missed any of our conversation with him, highly recommend checking it out on the podcast page after the show today. 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It is all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
While you're over there or on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL, you can check out our YouTube page, which will include today's Last Minute Blues podcast. Interview featuring Alexander Steen is over there right now. Highly recommend checking that out. We also have the latest edition of the Redbird Report. Me and T-Bone break down everything that we've seen with the Cardinals, including Matthew Liberatore's recent ascent, what they're going to do with the lineup after Ivan Herrera gets back, and it looks like that is indeed the case. He just posted recently on Instagram that he is back with the club as expected, so expect to see him in the lineup tonight against the Washington Nationals. Coming up next, do want to talk a little bit about Matthew Liberatore. What's the lesson from his ascent, and does it apply to future young starters? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Insightful insight, expert expertise, all on the 101 ESPN app, in your app store or Google Play.
When was the last time you checked if your car and home rates were competitive? Carlton.
Bet like the pros with the world's largest sports book right at your fingertips.
This, it's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
So what's the lesson from Matthew Liberatore? I was reading a really good piece over on Fangraphs earlier today, and they broke down the specific changes that have taken place for Libby and why he's having so much success this year. And their breakdown was basically, hey, he's the same pitcher that he was last year. What's really changed is who he was 2 years ago to the reliever that he was last season. And the biggest changes there are somewhat usage. The cutter has become a big pitch for him. That's really important, especially against right-handed hitters. But beyond that, he flipped the usage of the curveball and the slider. Slider is now basically his best pitch. Curveball was getting hit pretty hard. Now it's more of a, get me a strike kind of a pitch. Or let's throw this in a slider count where the change in the overall shape of it is just allowing him to buy a strike or end up with a strikeout in a spot that the hitter wasn't expecting it. So the results are what they are. 6th in the league in pitcher wins above replacement. In fielding independent pitching, he's gone 6 or more innings in 6 of his starts. The only starters that have done that more often this year are Hunter Brown and Zach Wheeler. Pretty damn good for Matthew Liberatore so far this season. But then this was their takeaway, T-Bone, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it because I kind of disagree with it. They wrote, last year's Cardinals started the season with 5 pitchers that were between the ages of 33 and 37, all of whom had at least 8-figure contracts, and all of them except Matt's recorded at least 100 innings. When there was a gap, the first reliever that got stretched out to the rotation was Andre Pallante, not Matthew Liberatore. And then the Fetty trade gave the Cardinals even more of what they already had. I'm a firm believer that you can never have too much pitching depth in this day and age, but if the Cardinals' cornucopia of average veterans is leaving potential young standouts in the bullpen, or worse, stuck in Memphis, maybe it's time to reevaluate that position. I think moving forward, that is indeed the case.
Agreed.
Next year, you can't just run it back with this rotation and continue to stick Michael McGreevy down in AAA. Continue to stick, if Quinn Matthews gets back healthy and has a successful second half of the season, you can't just run it back with him as well. That would be, in my opinion, huge mistake. But I do understand how they got to where they were over the last couple of seasons. And I think it was the right process. It did result in you taking an extra year to get these answers on Matthew Liberatore, but none of us really wanted to find out these answers on Liberatore. I thought you found a good role for him a year ago, and it worked. The changes that he implemented to his arsenal, I don't know if they take the same way if he was a starter instead of using those in shorter bursts as a reliever. Who could possibly know? But moving forward, yeah, I do agree with this assessment in 2026 and beyond. T-Bone, do you think they made a mistake in waiting as long as they did to get these opportunities for Matthew Liberatore? Do you think they made a mistake in going out and signing Gibson and Lynn last year and then having the trade for Eric Fetty? Were those mistakes in your mind?
I don't think those were mistakes. I think they handled the Liberatore situation right, to where, to your point, you allow him to get some success at the big league level in the bullpen. You get to fine-tune the stuff. And if we're just being honest, he wasn't successful as a starter last year, and it comes down to one simple thing. Look, as a starter last year, he made 6 starts, had a 6.35 ERA in those games. Now, you can maybe make the argument of, well, he wasn't necessarily stretched out all the way. Opponents hit 267, had an 868 OPS against him. What was the biggest reason for that? He didn't have a pitch to get right-handers out. Right-handers had an 823 OPS against him last year compared to lefties 584. You can't start in the big leagues if you can't get right-handers out. So they had to work with him through bullpen sessions, work with him throughout the season to try and figure out how to get right-handers out, come up with a plan in the offseason, and then go through this process of, okay, well, let's just see what it looks like in spring. If we get positive returns, we'll make him a starter, and then if it fails, we can put him back in the bullpen. Even though I thought that's where it was going to go, it's been a huge success. So, no, I don't think the Cardinals have handled this poorly, and there are plenty of things that I've gotten on the Cardinals for, trust me. I think they handled this properly. And the thing that I love about it, too, is a guy like him can play up when you put him in the bullpen, right? Like, I'll use McGreevy as an example real quick. There's going to be a lot of people that will look at this and say, hey, they should go back to the old formula of, hey, you bring guys up, they start out in the bullpen, they get their feet wet at the major leagues, find some success, and then they move into a starting pitching role, kind of like what they've done with Liberatore.
Sure.
But I don't think all guys are positioned to do that, because when you're in the bullpen, your stuff has to play up. You have to have strikeout stuff. And Libby had that, and he had a role he could get lefties out. I don't think McGreevy's stuff plays up to have success as much in the bullpen. Same as kind of what you saw with Palante to an extent. He had success when he first came up, kind of the ground ball specialist, but he couldn't get righties out. So you could do a better job of picking his lanes against left-handed batters. And his stuff didn't play up as well in the bullpen as we saw. It fits better as a starter's profile. So I don't think every guy can go through the same development path as Liberatore, but I think they handled him properly.
I think so as well. I don't get the second guessing of the usage last year. Really, the question was are they making a mistake this year by putting him into the rotation? That was the thing that people were more critical of because A, he was really good in the bullpen, and B, this leaves you light. BT mentioned it earlier today. They had a problem with that bridge getting to the back end of their bullpen. Hell, he was a back end of the bullpen guy last year. He was the player that you would go to in those lefty lanes and high leverage spots over JoJo Romero, over John King. So you remove him from that role, have a huge question mark of him as a starter, had no idea how that was going to go. And we still don't know how it's going to go the rest of the year, to be candid. It could end up reverting back to more of what it was a couple of years ago. I'm not anticipating that, but it's something that we at least have to be open to. I mean, look at last year. Jordan Hicks, who was not here, but he was with the San Francisco Giants. He was awesome the first month of the season. And guess where he ended the year? Back in the bullpen because his stuff didn't play up the same way. I think it's different. Libby has 6 pitches versus Hicks, who's really a 2-pitch mix guy. So there are clear and obvious differences there, but I think that's worth noting. The other thing that I'm going to be really curious about with Liberatore, dude, there's going to be a maximum number of innings at some point that they reach. Over the past 2 seasons combined at the big league level, he threw 147 innings. He is at 41 now. And we are a month and a half into the season. We're talking, it's mid-May.
Yeah.
I am really curious what this is going to look like because I don't see the team this way. I want to be clear on that. They might view themselves as a playoff contender. If they get to the deadline, there is a range of outcomes where they say, I think we could be in it, and maybe we are going to buy. Maybe Mo wants to go out as a potential playoff team this year, and they decide, you know what, we could be what the Blues were in 2025, and we could end up maybe even going on a little bit of a run similar to how we felt about the Blues once they got into the playoffs. What is Libby's role for something like that? Would they have to shut him down and go out and add a starting pitcher or put McGreevy into the rotation and move Libby back to the bullpen down the stretch? That is something that, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, don't get me wrong. That is the next thing that we'll be watching for with Liberatore is how they manage those innings. I know nobody wants to hear it, but it will eventually become a conversation.
Yeah, and I think the nice part about it for the Cardinals is, at least right now, and things can quickly change on them, it feels like they'll have plenty of outs to this, right? If you keep Steven Matz somewhat stretched out, you can then slide him into that spot. You basically just flip the roles that they're in now, right? Of, hey, Steven Matz is now starting to morph into that high leverage left-handed arm, or at least in the middle innings, best left-handed option you have. Maybe you just flip those roles when he gets closer to that. Or they can do what you're talking about, which is, hey, McGreevy's still stretched out. We are feeling a little bit better about our depth. Maybe Quinn Matthews comes back from his shoulder injury and is pitching and is starting to look good, and they say, okay, yeah, we do have some depth behind us. Let's go ahead and bring up Michael McGreevy. I think when they keep saying, hey, you're going to see McGreevy at some point, I think it might be them hinting at, hey, well, Libby's going to run into an innings limit. We're going to need somebody to fill that role. I think that's probably what they do when they get there, because I was looking, I was like, okay, Jordan Hicks, I felt like he hit a wall. Why? Because I felt like he got tired, essentially, because the most innings he had thrown before becoming a starter last year was 77 and 2/3 innings pitched. That was back in 2018. And then he threw a career high 109, and they moved him to the bullpen after 20 starts. Ronaldo Lopez was the other one I was looking at. Remember, he converted from bullpen to starter, and he only made 25 starts last year and maxed out at 135. So about 135 innings will probably be the threshold for Libby. Then can you fill in that extra 60 innings? And I think you can do that from McGreevy in the home stretch, or to your point, go out and acquire somebody as well.
It was also about effectiveness for Jordan Hicks. I don't know if it was all about just hey, he's getting tired. Maybe that played into the lack of effectiveness, but in his last 8 starts, he had a 6.4 ERA and opposing hitters had a 909 OPS against him. So starting June 1st, that was really when the effectiveness severely dropped for him. We'll see what that looks like for Matthew Liberatore. Again, I think the pitch mix is a big part of this. Hicks was a guy that is a 2-pitch pitcher, and he continued to be that really as a starter. Liberatore has a 6-pitch arsenal that he can go to. I think he's closer to a Christopher Sanchez than he is a a Jordan Hicks. So we'll see what this ends up looking like. I do think there are reasons for optimism with him, and they might have found themselves a legitimate middle-of-the-rotation arm at a minimum with Matthew Liberatore, which would be a great outcome this season. With Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. If you want more of that baseball conversation, you can check it out over on the Redbird Report. But coming up next, college football playoff expansion. It seems like it is coming your way sooner rather than later. What is it going to look like, and could it mean play-in games for both the Big Ten and the SEC? We'll discuss what that means next year on 101 ESPN.
We're just a couple of weeks away from the return of the Dotem Golf Tournament with the Morning After, presented by Michelob Ultra, May 29th and 30th at Oak Valley Golf Course and Resort. Get your foursome together for a full day out on the course with TMA, including complimentary breakfast from Donut Drive-In, lunch from Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, all the Michelob Ultra, the 100 West Dental closest to the pin competition, a long drive contest courtesy of Pondoff's Anonymous Recovery Podcast, and an after party with food from Texas Roadhouse Thursday and Super Smokers Barbecue Friday. A portion of the proceeds will go to support the St. Louis Hero Network in honor of Brian McKenna. Friday's foursomes are already sold out, and remaining spots for Thursday are filling up fast. Find all the Dotem info now at 101ESPN.com. Brought to you by Michelob Ultra Superior Light Beer. Take the fast lane home weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Carrie Davis on 101 ESPN. Two former pros and one average Joe. The fast lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Redbirds roar into Nationals Park. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Tonight presents a prime opportunity for Ali Marmol's Cardinals to secure their 6th consecutive win. Host Washington has dropped 2 straight and now occupies 4th place. First pitch from D.C. happening at 5:45. Eric Fetty will lock horns with southpaw Mitchell Parker. Elsewhere, the Don Kelly-led Pirates battle Atlanta. Manager Derek Shelton was jettisoned yesterday. Central Best Chicago visiting Juan Soto's Mets, while Milwaukee draws Tampa Bay. Evening hockey features Leafs, Panthers, plus Stars, Jets. City SC tackles San Diego FC tomorrow. This Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, Bradford Bruns is our resident college football guy, so I'm glad he's in here for us to have this conversation about what could be changing with the college football playoff. Alongside Tanner and Bradford, I'm BK. So this was a news story that was released today, but it's been bubbling under the surface now for really the last couple of seasons, especially over the last few months. The SEC and the Big Ten are spearheading a potential college football playoff expansion model. Now, the model that they're looking at is either 14 or 16 teams. Nobody knows for certain which one they're going to be going towards, but that's kind of the direction that they are heading in. We've talked about that, the college football playoff expansion. T-Bone hates it. I don't mind it at all. And the question was, like, what does this mean for beyond just the playoff? What's it mean for scheduling? Could the SEC go to 9 conference games? What does it mean for the conference championship games? Those are the kinds of things that I'm more interested in, honestly. And now we're starting to get a few more details on that. The SEC sure sounds like they're open and interested in going to 9 games. Why? Because of the all-powerful dollar figure. ESPN is willing to give them more money, which means the SEC says, cool, we'll play 9 SEC games now. Beyond that, this was a new detail that I saw today. This comes from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. He said that the SEC and Big Ten might have like a SEC Big Ten challenge that becomes a thing in future seasons. Like each of those conference teams would have an opponent from the other conference that they'd be playing against, similar to what you see in college basketball, right? There's like the Big 12 ACC Challenge, SEC Big 10 Challenge, all of that stuff during the course of the regular season, which is great, and I'd be super into that. It would force these SEC and Big 10 teams to play a quality non-conference opponent. I'm all in. Sounds wonderful to me. There was one other piece to this, though. They talked about doing like a play-in game where you get 4 automatic qualifiers from your conferences. So it would be the 1 and 2 teams would be like automatic berths. They get in, right? So the SEC, number 1, Georgia, number 2, Alabama. They're automatically going to get to the college football playoff in this scenario. And then you have 3, 4, 5, 6 in your conference that are still alive, technically. And instead of playing a conference championship game, the idea that's being floated out there, I don't know if this will be implemented, but the idea out there is that 3 seed, similar to the NBA where you've got the 7 versus the 10, 8 versus the 9, the 3 seed in your conference would play the 6 seed in your conference, and the 4 seed would play the 5 seed for a potential opportunity to get in. It's a play-in game for the college football playoff. That would take place in both the SEC and the Big Ten, and it would be basically taking place of the current conference championship.
And just to give an idea what that would have looked like in the Big Ten this year, Penn State would have played Iowa, and then Ohio State would have played the almighty Fighting Illini for a chance at the playoff, baby.
That would have been awesome. Are you interested in this, T-Bone? Would this be something like, do you like these changes beyond just the expansion to the playoff, which that's coming. There's no getting away from it, whether you love it or you hate it. The expansion to the playoff is coming. These new details are what I really want to hone in on with you.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of a play-in game, especially because we're at a point where the conference championship games, I don't know how much meaning they have. I guess they kind of have meaning in the current format because it gives you a bye, as we saw this year. But I kind of like what they're floating around out here of, okay, we're going to lock in 4 berths, but instead of having a conference championship game that would feel kind of meaningless, let's make this thing exciting. Let's make it a kind of a play-in tournament style thing. I kind of like this idea, and I'm more open-minded to it now just because I've admitted, look, it's over. I mean, I'm giving up on the whole we're not going to expand the playoff thing. They did it. They've opened the can of worms. I lost. I still believe I was right, but I lost. I hope this is where they cut it off, though. Like, I hope it is, hey, we're going to expand to 16, and then it's no longer a conversation. I know that's not going to be the case, but I like some of the stuff that they're doing in there. I do like the idea of these play-in style games, especially for these teams that are in the SEC and Big Ten. It will give some of those smaller schools, like Illinois, a better chance to get in. Now that you are especially going where there are no divisions, that was kind of your path you hoped when you were in Missouri a couple of years ago when you had divisions. Okay, let's just hope Georgia has it down here and then maybe we're really good that year. And now that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I just said Illinois would have had a chance to play in the play-in tournament in the Big Ten last year. So I do like kind of the ideas that they're trying to sprinkle in here, and I still like the fact that you're going to get a group of 5 team that gets in, and you're going to have some at-large bids as well.
I love the notion. I love the setup here, whether you're talking about 14 teams, 16 teams, but that's because I'm an SEC honk. And make no mistake about it, however you slice this, guys, it basically is the CFP revised version according to the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't have any qualms with that, but let's think about it. If you're talking about a 16-team arrangement, BK, 4 automatic qualifiers, right, from the SEC and the Big Ten, so that's half of the pie. That's 8 of the 16 right there. And then 2 allotted apiece to the ACC and the Big 12. My question here is, under this arrangement, if you have 3 at-large squads then selected as well in your one group of 5 selection, well, inevitably, as we knew that expansion would be on the table too, you're talking about plucking from, in all likelihood, just the SEC and the Big 12 they're in as well. So if you are all about that particular game, which I am, admittedly, I think that you're supportive
of this.
It's already happening, though. It's happening, yeah.
No, what I'm saying is the current setup, you already have that.
So it's just more of the same, just on a bigger level.
Yeah, it's just the automatic qualifiers. Whether you want to call them automatic qualifiers or the at-large, whatever. Yeah. They're already coming from those conferences. This just makes it official. That's all that they're doing. They're just putting a label next to those spots in who's getting into the playoff. On average, it's actually been more than 4 teams are getting in based on this current model over the last 5 years. If you had just implemented the 12 or the 16-team playoff, whatever it is, it would have been 4+ teams every year from either the Big Ten or the SEC. So this would not actually change all that much. It's just a matter of where they're seated and what the official labels are for those respective teams. I love the idea of the play-in game over having a conference championship game. And T-Bone, as an Illini fan, you should absolutely love this because 2 of the last 3 years, the Illini would have been involved in a playoff game the way that they have it set up right now. A couple of years ago, Mizzou would have been involved in a situation like this. I will say this. I wish it was just 1 game. I don't love the idea of 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. Why not just have the 4 versus the 5? Yeah. 3 should get in automatically. If you're a top 3 team in a 16-team conference, agreed, I think you should immediately get in. Now, the reason they won't do it my way is because you get the extra game, and that means more dollars, and they continue to add in more revenue.
Show me the money.
To be able to have, they've got the revenue split that's coming up potentially here in the next few years. All of that I get. I understand where this is coming from. It ain't hard to see. Just follow the dollars. But in an ideal world for me, I think it would be 4 versus 5 from the Big Ten, 4 versus 5 from the SEC. That game is hosted on the 4 seeds campus. Winner gets into the college football playoff opportunity, right? That to me would be the best way to go about it. And I would find this part kind of interesting. If you're getting the 4 automatic qualifiers and then you also have the at-large bids, if you're that 5th team, I don't think that final game, that play-in game, should count against your criteria to be an at-large bid. And that's where things could get a little wonky. Because you're going to have, for example, last year, let's say it was Illinois was the 5 seed, right, in this example.
Yeah.
And they were going up against
Ohio State, I think is who it was.
Sure, Ohio State as the 4. Illinois, if they were a top 16 team and they could have been an at-large team prior to that game against Ohio State, that game shouldn't be something that is held against them. So then if you're Illinois, if it is held against you, wouldn't it have been better to be the 6th seed? So that way the other 5 seed loses to Ohio State. I know you have the opportunity to get in with a 1-game setting, but if you were already potentially in as at-large team, that's where things get a little wonky to me, and I think they would have to have some fine print there that's implemented. But otherwise, I love it.
That just becomes a new edition of losing your conference championship game by default, really.
Yeah, what it was in the 4-team and what it's even been this year. There was a lot of debate. I don't remember who the team was. I think it was in the ACC. What do you do with like SMU if they lose in the ACC title game to Clemson? And I agree. I think that's how they should have probably been operating ever since the expansion to the 12-team playoff. I could get the 4-team because at the time there were 5 power conferences. I understood it. But I do agree. Like, that is something that you can't look at and say, okay, what do we do? I also think when you're talking about those 2 at-large or those 2 automatic bids for the ACC and the Big 12, I know this is probably going to sound cruel for that conference. It would be, I think they should have the play-in for that second spot as well, right? You have your 3 versus the 2 in both those conferences, in the Big 12 and in the ACC.
Final thing that I've got on this. If you're just a college football fan and you don't have an allegiance to any one individual team and you're like, man, I just want to see good college football games, this is the best thing you could possibly ask for. Because you're going to see better non-conference games. This would potentially require like Alabama to play Wisconsin and Georgia to play Ohio State and Texas to play Michigan. Like those big games that you get excited about in the non-conference, that would now be required by the 2 conferences that play a whole heck of a lot of blood donor games right now. It would also implement a new conference game within the SEC. So 9 of the games are played in conference for the SEC. Another game, so the 10th game, would be a non-conference foe from the Big Ten. So then you have just 2 games left over that if you're a Mizzou fan or you're a college football fan nationally, dude, we'll have 2 whatever games for those teams. That's great. You couldn't ask for anything more from a scheduling perspective. Now we're adding in another big game that is on the respective on the respective campuses for that potential play-in opportunity. And we've got an expansion of the playoffs. Dude, college football just added a whole hell of a lot of intrigue for just your casual football fan that wants to bet or watch these games. That's really who I think wins in all of this, and of course, whoever ends up making the money off of it. With T-Bone and Bradford, I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, did the Cardinals make the right call in sending Luken Baker down? We'll get into that here in just a little bit. The Junk Drawer is next here on 101 ESPN.
The Stanley Cup playoffs are on ESPN Sunday. Panthers and Maple Leafs. Pregame at 6. Puck drop at 6:30. Your home for the NHL. 101 ESPN. back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
All right, so I decided to make a change in my life. I'll get to that here in just a minute. But first, a quote from Luther Burden on why he's wearing number 87 for the Chicago Bears. Quote, "All the good numbers are gone," end quote. Part of that is because there are players that are already, they have their number selected, right? And part of it is the number of numbers the quantity of the numbers that have already been retired based on the Ring of Honor for the Chicago Bears. Just an all-time great quote by Luther Burden. Why are you wearing number 87? I don't know. All the good numbers are gone. Love it.
Concise as per usual.
So great. All right. So the change that I'm making, T-Bone, I've decided, because I've been going through this IT band issue. I've been dealing with it for like 2 months. I have bad hips. It's why I can't dance. Why I can't hit the baseball very hard. I am going to sign up for Pilates.
Oh.
And I've never done this before. It is something that Matt Adams loved Pilates. It's something that like opened up the use of his entire body, right? He's talked about this ad nauseum. I decided to sign up yesterday for a class. I will start next weekend with Pilates. I'm both excited and also absolutely terrified, because it's one of those things, like, it's almost like learning a foreign language. I have no idea what this entails. Like, I've seen what a Pilates class looks like. I don't know if my body is capable of going into some of the motions, some of the movements that you're required to do in a Pilates class. So I need some thoughts and some prayers for anybody that is in our listening audience right now. I'm going to go ahead and take the plunge. I'm joining everybody else, and I'm going to go ahead and try out Pilates.
Well, I can tell you my body's not made for Pilates. I'm seeing some of the stuff on some of these images, what they're doing. Yeah, my body don't move like that. Good for you. You know what? Good for you to really dive into a new health adventure. Now, granted, when's your first class?
Next Saturday.
Okay, so it's on a weekend, and I'm not as worried. I was going to say, should I worry about you oversleeping the alarm clock, like when he did hot yoga and then showed up late to work? Okay.
Yeah, possibly.
Well,
Adrian
really
messed
Saturday.
me up that day.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad it's on a weekend, so I don't have to worry about that. So that's
Somebody
good.
said start stretching. Somebody else said Pilates is going to bleep you up. That's true. Somebody else said start doing kettlebell swings. That'll help you out with your hips. Yeah, I've tried that, guys. Like I'm a lost cause on my own. So now I'm going to go to somebody else and say, can you please help me? I need so much help in my life. This is one area that you could potentially help me out with. So I've heard great things. People seem to say that it really helps them out on their running journey, or just in general, they really like the workouts. We'll see how this ends up going. Somebody else said you're going to suck at it at first, but I ended up becoming much better after, and it was definitely beneficial. I don't like sucking at things. You might think that I'm terrible on the radio. That's totally fair, understandable. I'm at least a 5 out of 10 maybe at this. I'm going to be a 1 out of 10 at this, at the Pilates stuff, and it's going to frustrate the hell out of me, and I don't know how I'm going to respond to this.
And the part that really sucks when you start doing something new like this, you are going to be so sore the next day, probably, that you're going to have a tough time. I'm going to hear BK get up out of, my God, out of the office.
Perseverance, buddy.
Yeah, there are going to be women that have been doing this for like a year or 5 years, whatever, right, that are a part of my class, and they're just going to look over and laugh.
Pros.
Somebody said, have you tried foam rolling? Yeah, guys, I've done everything I can. I've done ibuprofen. I've done foam rolling. I've done stretching. I've done hip strengthening on my own. I've done all of the things that I can do. Now it's time for me to go to the experts. Hopefully they can help me out a little bit. So I'll report back about a week from now and let you know just how horribly round one went at my Pilates experience. All right, in 15 minutes, who are the players that need to improve for the Blues to take that next step next year? We'll get into that in 15 minutes. But next, did the Cardinals make the right call in sending Luken Baker down instead of one of their other options? We'll get into that next year on BK and Ferrario.
Pilates changed my life.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner and Bradford, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So the Cardinals made the move official yesterday. They're sending Luken Baker down, and I have not seen the official announcement today, but it's official from Ivan Herrera on his Instagram account.
Ivan Herrera activated from the 10-day IL. Luken Baker has been optioned.
There you go. It is officially official. Ivan Herrera is back. Luken Baker's heading down to AAA. Great timing for us here on BK and Ferrario. Did the Cardinals make the right move? Because they do have, I think it's 5 of the next 6 games, T-Bone, they're going up against a left-handed starter. So the timing is interesting, if nothing else, to send Luken Baker down because he's typically the guy that's been getting those opportunities as the DH against left-handed starting pitchers. And frankly, he's been great in those scenarios. I think he's a top 3 guy right now on your team, an OPS against lefties. So this is the exact stretch of games that you'd like to have him available for you. But Ivan Herrera's return means you're probably going to have him in the DH spot a couple of those times. You'll also have him at catcher. So there is still very limited opportunities that would exist starting-wise for Luken Baker. And then the pinch hit opportunities have just been marginalized to basically not exist outside of 2 days ago against the Pittsburgh Pirates. If you look at the Cardinals between April 21st, which was like 3 weeks ago now, and that game on Wednesday, they had 3 pinch hit opportunities, and they were all non-leverage spots. Down 7-1, down 9-1, and up 9-1. It was basically get guys out of the game in the 8th or the 9th inning. With that as the backdrop to this decision, T-Bone, do you think it was right to send Luken Baker down instead of sending it out either Pozo or Barrero?
So I think it was the right call for now. And the reason I say for now is because it's clear the Cardinals are going to slow play Herrera. Like, my expectation is he's in the lineup today, but he's the DH. It sounds like they want to be just cautious with his knee coming back from this IL stint. So if you're going to DH him, okay, well, now it really does limit that spot because when you're going up against a lefty, okay, well, we're just starting Herrera in the DH. So now there isn't a role for Luken Baker, and you can still pick roles for everybody else on the bench, right? Like you look at Barrero, for example. Okay, he's our backup shortstop, and if there is a day coming up here in the next couple where Victor Scott needs a day off, he's our backup center fielder. So there's a role for him. There's a role for a Pozo of, hey, if Pages does get hurt, we don't want to lose the DH, so we've got a backup catcher. And then you've got the Gorman, Burley, one of those guys. There's still a role for them, and you're still trying to get them playing time as well. So, yes, for now, I think it is the right decision. But I think when you get back to a spot where you can say, okay, we think Herrera's knee is responding well to playing in these games at the big league level, we're now ready to throw him behind the plate for 2 out of every 3 games like they had at the beginning of the year. I think that's when you have to look at this and say, okay, we should probably call back Luken Baker, send down Pozo, and then find a role. I still don't completely understand their unwillingness to pinch hit for Alec Burleson against left-handed pitchers. He's not good against lefties. You clearly have a spot for Luken Baker, but for now, I do understand it. I think in like 10 days, this is where it becomes more of an interesting conversation.
So I was the one that actually argued for this, and then I realized where they're at in their schedule, and of the next 5 games, you have 4 games against left-handed starters. It's lefty tonight, righty tomorrow, and then 3 consecutive left-handed pitchers. That makes me actually rethink this and make me feel about it very differently. I think they might have messed up here.
But where do you play him?
DH.
But then where are you playing Herrera? Because he's going to need the DH.
Sure. There's 4 games coming up. He's not going to play DH in all of those.
Why not? As a DH, Herrera should be able to DH for 4 games.
Okay, if that is the call, if they're just going to have him like start 1 out of the next 5 games behind the plate, if that's the call, cool, I'm good with that. That makes sense to me. If it's not, who's DHing in those games? Against left-handed starters, who is your DH if not Ivan Herrera? Because your choices are probably going to be Alec Burleson, Jose Barrero, Pozo, or Gorman.
Could do a day of Arenado and then put...
Yeah, but it's still those same decisions.
Yeah.
You're putting one of those guys into the lineup. Or you could have had Luken Baker start at DH on that day. So it's only a couple of starts potentially that you're really talking about here, but it's just a situation where, like, you potentially could have sent down a Barrero, and I know people are talking, well, you'd lose him potentially to waivers. Maybe. I don't know that he's a guy that you'd necessarily lose to waivers, but I suppose that is something that you could take into account here. It's just an interesting time to send down Luken Baker. If you just look back at, like, his role previously, I think it made all the sense in the world. There weren't opportunities here. There probably won't be many pinch hit opportunities moving forward. But for the next 5 games, this is exactly the time when you most need Luken Baker's bat in your lineup.
But would you say this version of Luken Baker, it's not as if he's been tearing the cover off of the ball either. Sending him down momentarily maybe gets you in a more advantageous role as summer approaches. Could be.
I'm with you. I argued for this move. But that was without the context, and this is on me for not looking at what the pitching matchups were coming up over the next 5 days or so. That was without me realizing what the next 5 days were, which is 4 of the 5 against a left-handed starter. So you could have, like, if you really wanted to, you could have him start probably 3 of those 4 games. Yeah. So finally, you have consistent at-bats there for him. Clearly, they're prioritizing that third catcher. That seems to be what this came down to. And it's entirely possible, T-Bone, that they're just going to go for the next 5 days with Pozo and Pages as the 2 catchers. They start every game behind the plate. Ivan Herrera, for right now, is just your designated hitter. And then a week from now, he transitions over to catcher, and you make the move then of somebody else coming up. That's possible. And if that ends up being the case, cool. I've got no problems with this. This is just a spot where you potentially could have used Baker if you're not planning to do that with Ivan Herrera.
Yeah, and I think it will become a fair question if Herrera is not the DH for probably 4 of these 5 games. I can see where maybe they say a little caution, hey, if we played him back-to-back, he's just coming off the IL, let's give him a day. And then, but if you don't do that, then sure, I agree. There will be a conversation about, okay, why did Luken Baker go down? The way I'm just reading between the lines based on the way that they have talked, and clearly with their action of sending him down, I'm expecting Herrera is going to be their everyday DH for like a 10-day stretch. And then when you do that, I see how you convince yourself of, okay, well, we're not going to have a spot for Baker. To your point, you get him down and get him some playing time for whether it be 10 days, 15 days, whatever it is. I truly believe when they are ready to move him back behind the plate, assuming they are going to do that.
Assumption.
Assumption. But assuming they do.
Everything is an assumption.
I think... that was kind of some wise philosophy words it sounded there.
I mean, we have to assume on some of these things, otherwise we can't have conversations.
I look at this and I say, if you do put him back behind the plate, that's when you can call back up Baker, because then you will have a legitimate role for him.
All right, so that's where the Cardinals are lineup-wise. I'm really curious to see where they put Ivan Herrera into this lineup. Do they consider putting him in that 5 hole? Like, what does that mean for Wilson Contreras? What does it mean for Mason Wynn? What does it mean? Is Nolan Arenado going to finally move out of that cleanup role? We'll see. All of that will be announced here in the not-too-distant future. Now that they have announced the transaction, typically that comes first, and then, boom, we see the lineup in the not-too-distant future thereafter. T-Bone, this is a really important stretch for the Cardinals, for this fan base. We've seen this before where it's like, okay, this is the stretch where you could convince your fans that something more is there within this team. And then they lose all those games at New York, and they go lose 2 out of 3 against Atlanta. They come back home. It's like, okay, yeah, they're just the same old, same old. It's the same old Cardinals from the last 2 seasons. They're finally back to 500. You're going on the road, which has been the biggest issue for the Cardinals so far this season. You've got 9 consecutive games on the road against 2 really good teams in Philly and Kansas City, and then this series, which is almost a peer opponent in Washington, a young team that's trying to take that next step in their life cycle. You're going head-to-head against them, and it's not like one team has significant advantages pitching-wise over the other. It's pretty similar in that regard. I think if you come back home, you go like 5-4 on this road stretch right here, I think there's reason to buy in if you're a Cardinals fan. If you go 3-6, though, and you continue to get your teeth kicked in on the road, I understand completely why Cardinals fan would be like, all right, that's enough. I'm good here.
Yeah. I think this upcoming road trip will give you an idea. I don't know if it'll lead to buying in, but you can then look and say, oh, maybe they did fix the bullpen. Because I think that is the biggest thing that will be defined on this 9-game road trip. I think the month as a whole is the one that can really define and really bring Cardinals fans back in. Because of their next 21 games, 15 of the 21 are against teams above 500. So if you play well in this stretch, it's not like you can look at their schedule and go, oh, well, they just played the Pirates, the Rockies, and name all the bad teams in baseball. White Sox. Yeah. No, they just played a lot of teams that are fighting for a playoff spot like the Cardinals want to be doing. So I think this road trip will give you an idea of, okay, have they found some of their internal answers inside of that bullpen? And what does the offense now look like when Herrera is back in it? Does it get back to where it was prior to his injury? The month as a whole is the one where it is, okay, let's prove it. Let's see what you guys really are.
It's also potentially a huge road trip for Jordan Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I've been very adamant, I would just continue to play him. Just give him all of the runway, to use their word for it, this season and see where you end up at the end of 162 games. I don't know if that's the way they're approaching it. John Mozeliak's comments from earlier today in Katie Wu's piece made it sound like they are nearing that breaking point sooner rather than later. This is a big 9-game stretch for him, man. You've got a bunch of lefties. You mentioned it earlier today. He's been better against left-handed pitchers. Go make good on that promise. Go see if you can implement some of those changes that you've been making to your swing, some of those changes that you've been making to your pitch selection decisions. If you can't, oh boy, I will be curious to see if they consider pulling the rug out from under them and decide at that point in time, hey, makes more sense for us to give Sajaci that runway. He's the young guy that now gets the opportunity, similar to the way that they've been flipping back and forth between Gorman and Burleson before somebody eventually took it, that being Burleson, who gets that opportunity for the next month or so. So we'll see if that ends up happening with the other right-handed bat, this time in the outfield with Jordan Walker. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's gotta go here on BK and Ferrario. But next, who are the Blues players that need to improve for the Blues to take that next step? We'll talk about it here on BK and Ferrario.
You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance team studio cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN studio cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance team heating and cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Being able to close out games that are tight, understanding big moments, and we were a really good defensive team, but in big moments we weren't. And that's where, myself, I have to grow, and our leaders and, the players on the ice that are asked to close out games need to take into stock and watch right now the other players that are closing out games and how they can emulate what they're doing. And for me, it's what are these teams doing that have success in these situations? And that's part of a maturation process of understanding, the most valuable ice, understanding what's important, who their trigger guys are, who are their most dangerous players, the MDM, most dangerous man on the ice. We got to make sure he doesn't get the puck.
That was Jim Montgomery yesterday on the Fast Lane talking about what the Blues need to do in order to be better closing out tight games. With T-Bone and Bradford on BK. Alex off today, just an extra day going into the weekend. Much deserved, coming off of a very long season with a lot of hockey condensed here at the end of the year. T-Bone, when you think about the Blues, obviously that is a specific aspect of the team that needs to be better. They allowed far too many goals at 6-on-5, and it was ultimately the thing where the Game 7 came undone because of it, right? I think that that's obvious, and I don't really know what more to add to that conversation other than what Jim Montgomery just said. Who are the players in your mind that need to improve in order for the Blues to take that next step? Because we'll talk about what they can do to add. We'll talk about some of that stuff. But internally, who are the guys that in your mind still have more to give in order to improve in 2025?
So the number one player for me, and I'll be curious if you agree with this, is Pavel Buchnevich is number one for me. Because I look back at his first season with the Blues. Really good player. 76 points in 73 games played, was a 30-goal scorer. And then you get 22-23 where he deals with more injuries, plays just 63 games. But the last 2 years, he's played more games than he did in that 21-22 season that I just referenced. And he's gone from that 76 points to 63 to 57 this year. And he's playing on the Robert Thomas line now, too. So I think Buchnevich is the number one guy for me. And to me, it was too much inconsistency in his game this season from the offensive standpoint. I thought he was good most of the year defensively, but to me, he's still got more to give offensively. I mean, we did see him as a 30-goal scorer. So he is the number one guy that I would circle and say, I think that Buchnevich has more to give on that forward group and can really elevate that top line. And that could be part of the struggles this year. I feel like the last 2 years they've been searching for that answer on that other wing. And if you get Jimmy Snuggerud to get to the level that the Blues think, maybe that helps correlate the numbers to go up for Buchnevich.
I totally agree with you. He was the player that I had pinpointed, and honestly, I don't know that there's anybody else.
I got one more, and I don't know if it's fair to say this, but I think some of the playmaking, I think there's still more to give, is Zach Bolduc. I like Zach Bolduc. I love what we saw in his first year. I think now that you've gotten the taste of the NHL for 72 games, the expectation is, hey, you're going to be an 82-game player. I think he's going to be able to add more goals to it, but can he add more assists to that number? Can he be like a 50-point guy, 45, 50-point guy? I think he can be, and I think that comes with what we've talked about all season long, or so far this offseason, which is, do you improve up the middle? Right? Like if you can get a number two centerman, then maybe you bump down Shin to that third line. Now you had a little bit more of offensive presence, offensive playmaking on that line. I still think there's just a little bit more to give from Zach Bolduc. But if this was what he became as a third line winger, I'm not saying that it would be disappointing.
No, I think he might just be this, and that's okay. He might be. They're different players. I always make this comparison just because of the production that you were able to get out of him. He might be a Brandon Saad, where you just consistently write him in for 20 to 25 goals. You don't expect much playmaking from him. It's the shot. And Bolduc has a better shot, in my opinion, than Saad did. They go about it a little bit differently, but it's that 25 goals, 40 to 50 points per season. I think that might ultimately be what Zach Bolduc is. It's possible there's more in there, but to me, I don't know how much more I can realistically expect out of Bolduc than what we saw this season. Maybe 200-foot game, he improves a little bit in that area. Same thing is probably true for Jake Neighbors. Is Jake Neighbors going to be a significantly better contributor than 22 goals and 45 points in any given season? I think probably no. Maybe. It's possible, but I don't know how much I can expect that heading into the upcoming season. And the same thing is true for like Dylan Holloway. I don't know if he's ever going to have a better year than what we just witnessed. I think there might be more there, but how much more can I expect than like 30 goals and 60 points? That's a hell of a season out of him, especially given his 200-foot game. And so I leave this year and I think to myself, like, man, you're definitely going to expect more out of Snuggerud just because of playing time, right? I think the style of play, the performance that you got out of him, if he can just sustain that next year, I'd be feeling really good about it. I don't know how many guys I can expect more out of next year than what you saw this season. And that, to me, is why adding external players is so important. Because, yes, you will get improvements. Like, Bolduc maybe will be 5% better next year. Maybe you do have a 5% improvement from Snuggerud. You get 5% better out of Philip Broberg. All of those things are possible. I don't know how much you can expect them individually. I think this is a team that most of their improvement is probably going to have to come from, like, another year in the system, and then more importantly, adding somebody else that can extract more from whatever line they're on.
This is, I admit, at a lesser level, but what about an Alexander Texier? And you're talking about trying to really firm up the bottom six arrangement, right? So 1 year from now, you're moving into the playoffs. Your hope is to be able to advance, right, past a round or two. Well, does he become a guy on whom you can rely for more than 3 games and then he's scratched? We've talked about the uncertainty surrounding whether you bring back a Matthew Joseph. So you'd like to see conceivably, I say, with 1 more year left on that deal, more than 31 games played and more punch from that bottom six.
My guess is actually you get less than that next year.
Ooh.
Because, and what I mean, this is a good thing. You get fewer games out of Alexander Texier because his role has been taken by Jimmy Snuggerud and Zach Bolduc and Jake Neighbors and Jordan Kyrou and Pavel Buchnevich and who am I missing here? There's one other winger. Oh, Dylan Holloway.
Kyrou. Did you say Kyrou?
Yeah. There are your top 9 wingers, basically. Yeah. Like, those 3 lines, I think they're spoken for, barring some kind of an injury. And so Texier next year, I think the ideal scenario for him is he's the extra forward that can, on any given night, go into the game if you need him to. But barring an injury, I think those spots are all spoken for heading into the upcoming season. And really where that opportunity is either second or third line center. That is the one question mark that I have currently about your roster heading into next year. And that's to me where you could really upgrade. Like, you could go from what is effectively like the improvement that we're talking about here might be you get more out of Oskar Sundqvist by Oskar Sundqvist not being your third line center. Sonny goes down to that fourth line, and then whoever you add as that third line center, that's really where the improvement comes. So I think that makes all the sense in the world for them, and I think it would put them in position to become a potential 100-point team next year.
And kind of to that point of maybe you get more by lowering the role for an Oskar Sundqvist from third-line center to maybe the fourth-line center, I think you have to plan on the same kind of from Brayden Schenn as well. I think you have to expect, and I know this sounds kind of harsh, to me there's 3 guys you almost have to expect there's a chance that they have less production going into next year, and that is Schenn, Sundqvist, and then I don't know if there's a fix for this one because I think you're pretty much set at this position, but Fowler. I don't know if you're going to get the same production from those guys, and it's just because of their age, right?
Sure.
Because we've seen this before where guys, as they get older, you can start to see some of that wear and tear. It's why we had so many conversations at the beginning of the season of, is Brayden Schenn a second-line center? And even the Blues at the time were going with Pavel Buchnevich, thinking, okay, Schenn's probably better off in the long run if we don't play him as the second-line center. You almost have to operate because of those guys' age on an expectation of maybe instead of the 5% increase for all these players, you also sometimes have to account, okay, what happens if there is a 5% decrease in one of these guys?
That's something that we don't bring up enough, is the possibility that we just saw the best year of a player's career, or we just saw a player take a step and now they're going to take a little bit of a step back before then taking a massive step forward, right? It's possible next year Dylan Holloway, instead of being a 30-goal, 70-point producer, which would be that next step from where he was this year, maybe he becomes a 25-goal, 50-point producer next year. And it looks numbers-wise like he took a bit of a step back, and that's because teams are circling him now, and it is a little bit different. Again, I'm not predicting that, but it is something that is possible. Jake Neighbors, maybe next year, instead of getting more of those top 6 opportunities, he's on the third line. And so you see a bit of a step back in terms of the numbers, but his effectiveness is still there for you. Another guy that I would circle in this regard is Colton Parayko. Not because I hate Colton Parayko. I thought he was excellent this season. Dude, Colton Parayko in 64 games scored 16 goals and had 36 points for you. Those are career highs, and they might end up being an anomaly. Or maybe that's just what he can be when Cam Fowler is his pairing mate. So all of this stuff leads me to believe the number one thing that this team needs to do in the offseason is to add that second or third line center. Bolster this lineup, allow for some guys to take a step back, or guys just get hurt next year. That's also potentially something that could happen. And you have that fail-safe in place where it's not just expecting guys to improve from within, but also you have somebody that just wasn't here last year that you can now lean on more heavily. With T-Bone and Bradford, I'm BK. If you guys want some more Blues talk, by the way, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That is where the Last Minute Blues podcast can be found. Alexander Steen stopped by today. He was in studio with the guys. Great conversation about his transition to the front office, what he learned in this year behind the scenes, and what he thought about the season and what it could mean for them moving forward. All of that over at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, we'll give you a chance to get involved with One's Gotta Go. You give us four options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario.
.101 ESPN. Everywhere you look, that's where we are. On your radio, online, on your mobile device, and in your app store. Search the 101 ESPN app now in the App Store or Google Play. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Fetty and company fly into D.C. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Roughly 4 hours from now, the Cardinals kick off a 3-game set versus 4th place Washington. Ollie Marmol taps veteran Eric Fetty for this one. Number 12 seeking slight redemption following Sunday's 5-inning start. He will be opposed by lefty Mitchell Parker here as St. Louis targets its 6th straight dub. Other Central action, meanwhile, features division leading Chicago visiting Citi Field. Milwaukee takes on Tampa Bay. Don Kelly, not Derek Shelton, also helms Pittsburgh against Atlanta. Tonight's two NHL postseason matchups, Toronto, Florida, then Dallas, Winnipeg. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN. Count that big pen.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 different options. We will tell you which one's got to go. These can be sports or otherwise here in BK and Ferrario. From the 636, these are 3 options. One's got to go. Gorman, Contreras, or Sonny Gray. I feel like this one's pretty easy, right? 2 of these guys are contributing at a really high level. The other one is not. Gorman has to be the one that's got to go.
Yeah, I would agree. Nolan Gorman's the one that's got to go.
He has to go as well. What is his value right now around baseball? I know it's a broad question, but how much has it plummeted in the last, let's say, year alone?
You remember the Tyler O'Neill train?
Oh, yeah.
That's what you would get, I would think, in a return.
Ooh. What did Jared Kelenic get? Because that's probably pretty similar.
Cash. I think he was just a salary dump. Because he was making money, too, I think.
Braves trade for Kelenic and Marco Gonzalez. In return, Jackson Kowar and Cole Phillips. So, yeah, not a whole lot. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what you're getting.
And they took him on as taking on Gonzalez. That's what it was, because Gonzalez was a money dump by Seattle.
Yeah.
Sobering.
It's frustrating. I think somebody would maybe give up a little bit more than that just because of the power potential that exists there with Gorman, and he's not making the money that existed for Kelenic. But yeah, and the Marco Gonzalez deal as well. It ain't a whole lot. You don't have a whole lot of value in a player that just hasn't shown any ability over the last couple of seasons to adjust to Major League pitching. All right, from the 314, guys, one's got to go payment edition or bills edition. Your rent/mortgage, your car payment, your groceries per month, or your cell phone bill. Which one's got to go? Cell phone bill is the cheapest out of these, so that's clearly the one that to me has to stay. I mean, if I could get rid of one, I would get rid of my mortgage. Just because it's the most expensive one.
Yeah.
The most annoying one, though, I think, is a car payment because the return on the investment is so much lower.
Yeah, I agree with that because that's what I'm doing that right now because I think my car is like on a 6-year loan.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not going to have the same value when I'm ready to move on and get my next one, to your point.
The hope is my mortgage, like my house should be worth more when I pay it off than it was when I first purchased the home. The car payment, it couldn't be more opposite. The car is basically worth nothing by the time that you pay it off.
Boy, this is really depressing because now I'm listening to all this, and not only do I have the car payment, I pay the rent payment. I make nothing on that one. I'm ready to move on from that, too. So, man.
Well, I've got more for you.
The worst one's student loans, though.
I luckily don't have those.
Speaking of students, though, groceries here, hey, are sneaky frustrating. BK, you just wait. A number of years from now, it's going to be a bit.
Oh, dude, don't.
But you throw into the equation. Okay, you've got a high school senior. How about the high school freshman, both of whom involved actively in the sports? You can't imagine the number of items we go through weekly.
What do you, out of curiosity, Bradford, like our typical grocery bill, I would say per week is like $200, somewhere around there. Are you guys above that, below that? Does that feel about right?
I'm not saying double it, but go up, buddy.
Sure.
Go up.
That feels about right. I was just curious kind of what's ahead for me. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. One's Gotta Go for the Blues Young Player Edition. This one might be a little tougher. Jake Neighbors, Zach Bolduc, Jimmy Snuggerud, Dalibor Dvorsky. Which one has got to go?
Next season?
Oh, okay.
That's my cop-out.
I'm keeping Dvorsky. I think he's the long-term answer, second-line center. At least that's what they've told me. You said Snuggerud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Snuggerud to me stays. I think he's going to be a star. I think it's Neighbors. And the reason I say that, and this is why I think there's more in the tank for Zach Bolduc, as I talked about in our last segment. Zach Bolduc's got the shot. right? So he's got the shot. Jake Neighbors, his shot's okay, but where do his goals come from? The nitty-gritty, getting to the net, doing the hard, dirty part of the game of hockey. And I think when you've got a guy like that, that's when you can really see the ebbs and flows in their goal production, points production. That's why I would say he's the one that's got to go. I think there's still more in the tank with Zach Bolduc because of his shot and what he can bring to that power play.
Boy, this is a tough one because I'm torn here. Whether you're talking about Bolduc, Snuggerud long term, I love what I actually saw in the small sample size in the postseason. Guys, I don't think that we can overstate just how impressive Snuggerud was in that first round series as far as being able to domineer and create that net front presence. There's a guy who to me looks as if he could fit the bill for years to come there. I'm not disparaging Bolduc whatsoever. But at the same time, you know that Dvorsky, you hope that he projects as an upper six forward and a center to boot for you moving forward. So regrettably, I'll go with Bolduc.
I think I would go Dvorsky. Just because I've seen the other guys do it at the NHL level, and I haven't seen it with Dvorsky, and I am somebody that I would prioritize the known commodity over the unknown. So Dvorsky may never become a top six center. It just might not happen for him. I hope that it does, but I don't know. I've seen Jake Neighbors, Zach Bolduc, Jimmy Snuggerud. They all have legit top six potential, and they've all shown at a minimum they are capable contributors at the NHL level. So I would go Dalibor Dvorsky again because I am prioritizing the production over the potential of what a prospect could become down the road. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One's got to go book edition: thriller, mystery, romance, or comics. I feel like we should start this one with Bradford, the teacher of the group.
Ooh, okay, so we've got mystery,
thriller, romance, or comics. Comic book.
So we're talking about classic romance, because if you're doing that, then you
Bradford,
have to dig into the Shakespeare well.
Mic off.
You've got to dig into the Shakespeare well. I'm over here. I'm over here.
I'm going to get up and walk over there.
Comics. Serious literature. Serious literature.
I would say, I mean, I hate books in general, but I would say the comedy, yeah, those are the ones that got to go. Thriller and action, those you can get into those. Romance, probably not my cup of tea, but the comic one, yeah, out.
Yeah, for me, it would be the romance. I can't, outside of like The Notebook, which is an all-time great movie, all-time great book. You give me a Sparks novel, I'll consider reading it. But other than that, there's just not a whole lot romance-wise that would really appeal to me. So that would probably be the direction that I would head there.
You're not a Colin Hoover fan?
That's not my cup of tea. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, or the YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. If you guys give us four options, we'll tell you which one's got to go. One's got to go future Cardinals rotation edition: Libby, Palante, Matthews, or McGreevy. Which one's got to go? Libby, Palante, Matthews, or McGreevy? This is a good one.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to stick with Matthews, and I know I understand your thing that you just said with Dvorsky not seeing him. I think he's got incredible stuff if he can stay healthy and really fine-tune it and develop. So he stays. I think McGreevy's stuff looked incredible last time he's up. So I think it's Palante is the one that I would get rid of. Mm-hmm. There's less swing and miss. I think he's got the least amount of swing and miss in that group, because I think McGreevy's stuff's a little bit better. And he has a worse walk rate as well. He walks guys. I think it's Palante for me. I think he does. His ceiling to me is like a number 4. I don't know if it's much higher than that. I think McGreevy can be like a 3. Libby can be a 3. Matthews a 1. So I think it's Palante.
Yeah, not to be too much of a prisoner of the moment here, but it's true. When you think about the upside of the other guys involved here, you're prioritizing swing and miss moving forward. You think that you know what you have in Liberatore and hopefully a Quinn Matthews in that department. But McGreevy, his control has been nothing short of impeccable at this level. And Palante, the margin for error to me is that much shorter. If the command isn't working, it's got to be him.
I love this question because it pits what I just said about Dvorsky versus the 3 other players against me. And I feel so seen because I would also go with Andre Palante. And I don't really know what to do with that in my own head, because I just said I would prioritize the production over the potential. And yet in this scenario, I am prioritizing the potential of Quinn Matthews over the production of Andre Palante. I think that may just be because I don't know how much I trust this long-term from Palante. And I think it's this. I think you have other guys that already profile as what Palante is. I think McGreevy can just replace what Palante has been.
Yeah.
And so you're not really missing out by a lot in this scenario. Meanwhile, if you were to remove one of those other wingers for the Blues, don't really have somebody else that can immediately come in and replace that production necessarily. So I think if I'm trying to explore my own brain, that's what happened here. But I would be prone to getting rid of Palante in this scenario. The upside from Matthews is too hard to ignore, in my opinion.
Is he the only pitching prospect, by the way, that's for? Like, if I put Hintz in this instead of Matthews, Hintz goes?
I would get rid of Hintz.
I think I'm with you.
And that has a lot to do with just, I don't know if Tink Hintz is going to be able to be a starter.
Yeah, agreed.
Would love to see it, but I don't know. Like TK Roby, same thing. I have no idea if he's going to translate to a starter. Gordon Graceffo, same thing. I don't think he's going to be a starter for this team long term. Really, the one guy that you could put on this list with the other three that I would take over any of those three would be Quinn Matthews. He's the one that profiles that way for me, at least based on what we have seen, what we have heard, what we know about the current prospects within the system. All right, with Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. That was One's Gotta Go here on BK and Ferrario. If you guys have missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page afterwards. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That is all sponsored, as always, by
Schaefer Door Company.
Over there when you find it, whether that's on the 101 ESPN app, 101ESPN.com, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. Whatever is easiest for you, whatever you prefer as the way to listen to your podcast or watch your podcast as well. You can check out the Redbird Report. We have a new episode up over there that you can check out. Also, the Last Minute Blues podcast today. They recorded an interview. It's like 25 minutes long with Alexander Steen. It is well worth your time if you want to get some insight into his transition to the front office role. Check that out. youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. They were in the new podcast studio today with Steen, so I recommend watching it that way. But if you prefer just to listen, check that out over there at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind on 101 ESPN.
Major League Baseball is back on ESPN tomorrow. Pirates and Braves. Pregame at 2:30. First pitch at 3:05. The MLB plays on 101 ESPN.
Alongside T-Bone and Bradford, I'm BK. We're just talking off the air about Rachel McAdams, her heyday.
I was so
we brought
lost.
up the Sparks novels and the movies that came as a part of that. So we're doing our personal rankings on those movies, and T-Bone just didn't participate. What a range from 2002 to 2005 for Rachel McAdams. Hot Chick, Mean Girls, Notebook, Wedding Crashers. Just banger after banger in that catalog over a 3-year stretch. Just absolutely unbelievable run for her. All right, T-Bone, to finish out the show today, we do need to get back to the St. Louis Cardinals. They are back in action this evening. They've got a 3-game set going up against the Washington Nationals. By the way, for any of you that are trying to watch this series, tonight is on Apple TV. So don't yell at your significant other when you can't find it. No, it is not going to be on FanDuel Sports Midwest. You will not see Brad Thompson on this game. It is on Apple TV tonight. It is exclusively streaming Cardinals at the Nationals this weekend. You've got a couple of lefties on the mound in this series, T-Bone. You have Ivan Herrera back into the lineup. They will play the lineup game later on this afternoon, I have to imagine. But for you, when they put that out, what are you anticipating? How do you think they make this thing work?
Well, the lineup is out. Do you want me to read it off real quick, or do you want me to
All right, so first we have to give an update for everybody that is listening right now. If you're going to play along with the fast lane for the next 30 seconds to a minute, turn your radio down. Here is what the lineup is going to look like. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, T-Bone.
All right, the top 5 stays the same. Lars Nootbaar in left, Mason Wynn at short, Brendan Donovan at second, Nolan Arenado hits cleanup at third, Wilson Contreras fifth, Ivan Herrera returns to the lineup as the DH in the 6th spot, and then it'll be Walker in right, Pages catching, Victor Scott the second batting 9th.
Makes sense to me. I was curious where they would put Ivan Herrera. BT mentioned this earlier today. Just allow him to get his feet wet at the big league level again. Don't anticipate or expect him immediately to be what he was prior to that injury. He's also as the DH tonight, which makes some sense as what we were talking about earlier. If you're going to go up against lefties this weekend, especially over the next 5, you've got 4 games against left-handed starters. You probably do want to get him more opportunities there. It just maximizes your right-handed potential. I am going to be interested to see, like, if you get a right-handed reliever that comes into the game, do you switch things up at all? Because you have a massive right-handed lane that you have created for yourself. I know they haven't been worried about this as much lately, T-Bone, but you go Arenado, Contreras, Herrera, Walker, Pages. That's a lot of righties consecutively. And since you have that third catcher, you could technically, for example, pinch hit for Pedro Pages. You could pinch hit Gorman or Alec Burleson in that spot. You could do the same thing for Jordan Walker if you wanted to as a righty there. So they've got some options at the bottom of this order to be able to mix and match at the end of these games, if that's something they want to do. It's not something they've done a whole lot lately, though.
Yeah, I'll be curious what they decide to do, because another name that you could throw in there is that Walker one that you talked about because of his struggles against right-handed pitchers with big sliders. Like, would you consider pinch hitting Burleson in a big game situation in that spot? Now, I don't know necessarily what you do in the outfield. Maybe you stick with Burley in the outfield. Maybe you move Donovan out there and you put Gorman at second base. I think they'll just stick with Walker because, as we've talked about, it feels like we're getting closer to the end of that runway, but you kind of got to push him now. We'll see what they decide to do. I'm fascinated to see what they do with, like, pinch hitting situations, because I thought they were pivoting back to doing it in that Pittsburgh series, and then they sent Baker back down. So I'll be fascinated to know what it looks like. I don't mind hitting Herrera in the 6th spot. I agree with what you said. You're just trying to kind of get him into it. I'll be curious what they decide to do, like, a week from now, right? What do you do when he finally is his feet are wet again?
Make that decision for you.
What if the production's not coming from, I don't know, like a 34-year-old former guy who used to be an MVP? He's got the contract at third base.
Speak for it.
We'll see. I'll see if Ali Marmol will be willing to move Arenado out of the top 5.
I think eventually you have to. Now,
I agree.
Today is not that day, right? You don't have. You're not forced to do that right now. But if it continues the way that it was, and Ivan Herrera has a 1,500 OPS, that's not going to happen. But if he has like an 800 OPS after he gets back, and Nolan Arenado is hovering around a 395 slugging percentage, the way that he has been so far this year, yeah, you're going to have to make that switch eventually. I don't think there's any urgency to do that today. So I don't mind the way that they've gone about it, but there you go. There you have it. The first lineup with Ivan Herrera back in. Dude, that lineup looks so much better with Ivan Herrera in it. It changes the outlook for so many different things. This weekend is going to be a massive test for the Cardinals. We'll certainly be breaking it down here on BK and Ferrario on Monday. 3 games against the Washington Nationals. No more excuses for the lineup with Ivan Herrera back in. That bullpen now has the roles that have been figured out. You've got Graceffo, you've got Steven Matz to be able to bridge things over to the back end of that group. You also have Fedde, Palante, Michaelis all on the mound. They've all pitched relatively well recently, with Palante being the one real exception there. He has not looked great, and you'd want to see him be able to get things back on track this weekend against a limited but talented lineup in Washington. For Tanner Hendrickson and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. It's been a hell of a few weeks with the Blues going on this run. We've been out at Enterprise. We've been at Centene. We've been all over the place, but we appreciate you sticking with us along for the ride. Hopefully we can do something similar with the Cardinals this year. We'll talk to you Monday at 11 a.m. Happy Mother's Day to each and every one of you that listens out there. Be sure to treat your wife. Be sure to treat your mom this weekend. It is a huge weekend to celebrate them in our lives. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. The Fast Lane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN.